Okay, I'm showing at 6:30. If I can get everybody to their seats, we can get this started. We've got a pretty heavy agenda tonight, so don't want to waste a lot of time. If get everybody in the back down. City Council meeting for May 9th, 2011 will now come to order. Remember, times indicated next agenda items are approximate start times only. Turn off all cell phones for the duration of the meeting. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Natal.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Snyder.
Here.
Councilman Moreno.
Here.
Councilman Benson. Here. Councilwoman Carson.
Here.
Councilwoman Teeter. Here. Councilman Johnson. Councilman McEldowney.
Here.
And Councilman Bullock.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And just for everybody's knowledge, Councilman Johnson called in, and hopefully we will have some resolution on the 23rd of May. So thank you all for coming. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I just wanted to let everyone know, since there's been some question as to the status of whether or not I'm alive or not. I just want to let all of you know that I am alive and well. Thank you. And with that, if you'll all stand in for a moment of silence and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be great. Thanks. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I don't know how many of you saw the smoke up north, but I guess there was a farm caught fire up there at 120th and Highway 2. They were having some problems with the wind. The wind up there is just horrible right now. A lot worse than it seems down here. Okay, at this time, will city staff please pass around the microphone and we can have introductions.
Maxine Galindo.
Sandy Carruthers.
Beverly Benzel, Camp Neighborhood.
Christy Jocelyn Martin, Community Enterprise.
Robert Benzel, Camp Neighborhood.
Danny Thomas.
Betty Thomas. Crystal Elliott. Ellen Haug.
Guillermo Serna.
Al Cordova.
Larry Quintana.
Tova Forgo.
Michael Cheney.
Margarita Ceballos Gomez, Community Enterprise.
Sean Ford.
Rick Guys.
Joy Bishop.
Gene Leffel, Board of Adjustment.
John Prestwich.
Jennifer Prestwich, Bell Creek. Michelle Hill, Economic Development.
Darren Sterling, City Engineer.
Chris Kramer, Planning.
Larry Wood, Police Department.
John Howard, Information Technology.
Ms. Ryan Cordero, Government Relations.
Michelle Halstead, Communications Director.
Preston Gibson, Excel Energy.
Lynn Hallowell, City Manager's Office.
Laszlo Caloy from the Mexican Consulate.
Javier Mopomea, Mexican Consulate as well.
Brittany Morris, Director of Economic Development.
Thank you very much. First item on our agenda tonight is proclamation for Mexican Consul General Eduardo Arnal. And I am so sorry that I missed the going away party for him. I actually was closer to his real home than he was at that point. But he's been just an absolute positive influence on our whole metro area. He has done so many good things for us and made himself so available. We were very sorry to see him go. So what we've decided to do is to recognize him with a proclamation. And what I'm going to do is read the proclamation, and then we'll go from there. And whereas Mr. Eduardo Arnal has led the Mexican General Consulate in Denver for the past 3 years and 7 months, and whereas he has faithfully and consistently served a significant number of Commerce City residents of all backgrounds through the provision of notary services as well as health checks and referrals in a timely manner, and whereas Consul Arnal values a healthy community, has worked to expand the health services available at the Mexican Consulate General, and whereas he has made every effort necessary to reduce waiting lists from 9 months to less than 1 week, so the customers of the consulate would have their issues resolved in a dignified and expeditious manner, whereas through his intercession and commitment to serving his constituents, 6,000 people have received free legal services, whereas one characteristic that distinguishes his career as a public servant is his enormous capacity to bridge gaps and build relationships, and whereas he has earned the respect of other civic leaders and the affection of residents in Commerce City, Colorado, and the entire mountain region, and whereas due to his unparalleled success in the General Consulate of Mexico in Denver, he has been appointed by President Vicente Fox to serve as the Mexican Consul General in Chicago, the second largest Mexican consulate in the world. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Commerce City offers its appreciation to Consul General Eduardo Arnal for his meritorious service, loyalty, and dedication he has rendered to our community. If I'd be open for a motion to approve the proclamation. Ms. Snyder?
Yes, move to approve the proclamation.
Ms. Teeter?
Second motion?
I have a motion and a second to approve the proclamation. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I require a voice vote, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion passes. Mr. Cordero, would you like to bring them up and introduce them and give them the plaque? Do we want to go down and have a picture, or?
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. I would like to introduce Mr. Laszlo Caloy. He's the Consul for Community Relations at the Mexican General Consulate here in Denver.
Well, Mayor, thank you very much, and thank you all the Council and the City of Commerce City for this great recognition for Consul Arnal. Unfortunately, he needed to travel for a very personal matter to Mexico City, so unfortunately he couldn't be with us. I know he was very fond. He was very, he visited more than 150 cities all around the state, all the 65 counties, also in Wyoming. We take care of Wyoming too, but I know that he was very fond of the City of Commerce City with Paul Natal and then with Mr. Cordero. We had a great relationship. We've been working on a great partnership in these years, strengthening our political, economic, community and culture experience with Commerce City, and we, of us here that are staying here at Denver, we're going to still working to strengthen these relationships as more as we can, and I know that Consul Arnal would be very, very happy to receive it personally, but unfortunately he couldn't. But thank you very much. We'll appreciate it.
Just thank you again for all this recognition, and we will continue on in strengthening the relationship with the city. Thank you so much.
Please, thank you.
I know you were. Okay, thank you.
The speak button?
Oh. No, you shouldn't listen to him. Have you talked to him?
The what's not working?
The speak button. Request to speak.
Oh, okay. The request to speak buttons are not working? Okay. Okay. That's why. I was wondering why nobody did it. Okay, the next item that we're going to go into is an executive session. If Ms. Snyder would read from the, I'm sorry, do the motion for the executive session. I'm sorry, I'm having a
Sure,
rough day
I'd be
today.
happy to. Move to go into an executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024E for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations concerning XL and United Power franchise agreements.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second, Ms. Teeter?
Second the motion?
Okay, I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. It's going to be very short, correct? Maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And again, ordinarily we would do executive sessions at the end, but because we had to bring people in tonight, we put it at the beginning because we knew it was going to be short. We'll be in executive session. Thank you. And back to the meeting. Back on record. Okay, there were two sets of public comment rosters made available at the entrance to the council chambers for those who wish to address council. One on items that were agenda and one on that were not on the agenda. When I call you forward, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You're reminded that each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Council is reminded they are not to engage in discussion or debate, but may ask clarifying questions, express concern when appropriate. City manager will generally assign staff members to get the necessary information to solve issues. There are 5 people on the list tonight. First person is Albert Cordova. Is it Cordova? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you today?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself?
We're here to, I belong to the American Legion in Commerce City.
Oh, sir.
And we're here to,
just your name and if you would start the timer up again after he's done saying who he is. Just so we
Give your name and address.
My name is Al Cordova. Address is 6945 Colorado Boulevard, Commerce City.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Anyway, I'm here to, we have a bunch of veterans in our organization, and we are never recognized as far as the parade is concerned. We always have some officers that, some of them don't even belong to the community, and we would like to have something to be recognized. There's a whole bunch of veterans that live here in Commerce City. And this is our beef, to have them recognized and be a part of the parade, like a parade marshal. I myself have been in the parade for 40 years. And this is what I would like to have. These guys that are members here, that some of them put their life on the line, but they never be recognized for anything. And I hope that with me being here, that these veterans will be recognized. You got anything to say?
Guillermo Serna, 14122 East 102nd Place, Commerce City, Colorado. Al has participated in the parade, as he said, for 40 years. He's a veteran of the Korean War. Now, for the last 10 years, he's been on the honor guard in Fort Logan. That's twice a week for the last 10 years. And this is when veterans pass away, giving them the 21-gun salute. They have 38 trophies, different sizes, different places in their participation. So they're very dedicated to the city. They're very dedicated to their veterans, and they feel very proud of themselves. And this is part of what I had to say the other day. And they heard about it on the TV and watched it and all that. So they came up with this list of names of the people that live here in Commerce City. Okay? And in any perspective, as of what I would like to do right now is put their name and nomination on the yearly basis. Okay? So that you have a list, okay, to pick from. And we can't say that we don't know who's here or who isn't. And that's why he's here. Because he has been there the longest, and he's seen the veterans pass away, and that's why he's here.
Okay.
So he's got the names here. We'll give it to the city manager, and please, from his perspective, is don't use these names for any other thing other than this.
Okay. And your time is still fine, because Mr. Cerna was going to be the second person called up. So they actually just went through Mr. Cordova's time, so we're fine. Did you have anything else you wanted to say,
No.
Mr. Cerna? Okay.
I just, I have a lot of respect.
I'm glad that you came forward, Mr. Cordova. I would think Commerce City is probably one of the best cities around for recognizing, our veterans. We've probably done more in our city as far as veterans and contributed more to the freedom of the United States through our veterans than a lot of cities in this state. So we are extremely proud of all of you. Mr. Flannery, I would hope that this list will help you out in the future, and I don't know that if there was a way to maybe get them a spot in the parade, I'm not sure if it's too late or not too late, where they could be recognized in our parade, where that would be fine. The other thing that maybe I would suggest, and again, Mr. Flannery, you're in charge of this, so it's just a suggestion, and it's not coming from the council. Maybe we look at some time, maybe on Veterans Day or something, where we do something that's more central to Commerce City veterans and recognize them at some type of an event. Mr. Flannery.
Thank you,
and then
Mr.
I'll
Mayor,
go to
members
Mr.
of council,
Marino.
and absolutely will include this list. The last time we had a presentation, we specifically, there were some suggestions made, I think very good suggestions. I think that's a very good suggestion. And, there was some discussion of how the groups might be put together, and breaking them out from other groups was something that maybe wasn't as likely, but I think we can always talk with the groups, and we have a committee that's set up to specifically deal with that, and this will be a very good list to put part of that.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a big benefit, because I know that that's sometimes a challenge, coming up with the people, names that we can use. Mr. Marino.
Mr. Cordova, I just want to say thank you for your service to our country, and thank both of you for putting that list together for us. I think it's going to be a great resource in making sure that we honor our veterans appropriately here in the city. So thank you.
Yes.
Okay. The one reason why I brought this up, because there is no Latino parade marshal. There never has been, and this is what we'd like to bring up.
Like I said, he is in age, okay? So please respect that in
Yes.
perspective.
Yes.
He's not here to argue.
No,
He's
and
here
it's
to
fine.
give you information to be useful.
Yeah, and we appreciate you coming forward. There's no one in this city that doesn't respect what our veterans have done for the safety of our nation. And we really appreciate coming forward, and I know Mr. Flannery will take care of this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Do you know whether, push your request? It works now? Okay, thank you. Okay, next person is Michael Cheney. Good evening, sir.
Michael Cheney, 7980 Olive Street. I live in the Monaco Enclave. And what I would like to address the council about today is I want to commend you on your bike pass, but you have some issues with accessibility to the bike pass. Last Sunday, the wife and I decided to take a little bike ride. And in order to get on the bike path at the Arsenal, we have to do one of two things. Either pedal all the way down to the high school or cross at 80th Avenue and Quebec Parkway, there at Highway 2, and then trek 20 yards across the weeds that are full of stickers. And if you're on a bicycle, that's not a good thing to do. You either got to carry it or deal with a flat tire when you get across to the bike path. There is no sidewalk that runs from 80th over. There's no sidewalk down Quebec Parkway until you get down to the high school. So, 60 Minutes had a thing over the weekend about Boulder City being one of the healthiest places around. I'd like to see Commerce City on that list, and if we could have access to the bike paths, it'd be a little easier to get everybody healthy. That's the one bad point about it. You either have to load your bike on a car and drive someplace, or you have to deal with traffic on the roads to get to the bike path. And dealing with traffic, as my wife put it, she doesn't like to deal with stupid drivers.
I can understand that.
It's not good when a bike and a car meet like that. It gets a little unsafe. So, something to think about in the near future is you got the bike path, now how do you get the people to the bike path?
Okay. Mr. Flannery, Mr. Cheney may be a terrific volunteer for one of our Parks and Rec committees because, now I'm not trying to take up a lot of your time, but it's people like you who come to us, who give us a challenge for us to work on. And if you had not come forward, we probably wouldn't be telling Mr. Flannery, can you look into this?
No,
so he may be a good contact for us. And I've got a couple of people here. Mr. Marino.
Thanks, Michael, for coming and bringing this to our attention. I think it comes up at a particularly good time because a couple of weeks ago, Councilman Bullock and I attended a public meeting for the Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan, which included a lot of the core area cities, and some of the exact issues you identified were the same issues that people brought up in that meeting. So I think your voice would be great to have on that in those meetings, and if staff can communicate when that next meeting is with Mr. Cheney, that'd be much appreciated.
Absolutely, and that's probably the comment that I was going to make, was that we are in the midst of a walkability and riding plan and the connections, so the timing is perfect for this. And when I first got here, that trail didn't exist as a perimeter trail, and ladies with babies and strollers were trying to make their way across by the railroad tracks, and it was very scary. So I think the connections are the next step to that. So thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bullock, and try to direct as much as we can to Mr. Flannery.
I was just going to echo what Mr. Marino said, because we were at that meeting 2 weeks ago, and the exact comments that you made are the exact comments that we were addressing. So if the next meeting's coming up, and I'll make sure you're on the mailing list, I'll talk to Tracy and have her make sure that you get put on the email list, so when the next meeting comes up with the master plan, you will be there.
I can try and attend.
Mr. McEldowney.
No need to repeat the comments made.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you for coming forward,
Thank
sir.
you.
Next person, John, is it Prestovich? I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I was writing quickly.
Oh, okay.
John Prestwich, 10684 Bell Creek Boulevard, Henderson, Colorado, but I believe that's still in Commerce City.
Still is.
I'm here this evening. We had an incident last Friday I just wanted to make you guys aware of. You may already be aware of it, but we had a stabbing in our community. It's a problem that is very concerning for, I think, the overall community. And I wanted to come here this evening and find out if there are any city programs that could help us as a community try and figure out what we can do about it. There's a couple of other issues in the community that are becoming increasingly problematic. We've got a lot of graffiti going on, and you guys do a great job at coming out and cleaning it up. But what I'd like to try and figure out is if there's a way to get to it before it gets vandalized. You know, we've had an issue with the there's a car wash on Bell Creek Boulevard that you know, these economic times are terrible, and I think that the person has unfortunately perhaps gone out of business, but now it's abandoned, and that seems to be becoming a magnet for even more graffiti. And then the bridge where you kind of pass through and start to get into the residential portion of the community has become again a problem for a lot of graffiti. You know, I'm not going to get into a whole lot of the details of the stabbing. I mean, it's terrible. It was a kid in the neighborhood who's been a problem in the neighborhood habitually, and we'd like to get him out of the neighborhood. That being said, we're wondering what kind of procedures or regulations are there that we could go to the apartment community adjacent to us and find out how they're doing their screening, if there's any stricter enforcement that could be done. You know, issues like that. I mean, we're certainly willing to step up to the plate and become involved as a community and you know, try and police it as best we can. But I just wanted to take this opportunity this evening to figure out if there was a way or additional city programs that might be available to help us to come together as a community. I don't want to go into too many details here, but it does seem like as the summer months come, this becomes a problem. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm going to Ms. Teeter, but first, Mr. Flannery, I don't know if you want to do anything at this point, but definitely get him in touch with the police department, because I know we have those programs out there.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a Chuck Sonyer with our police department as a Neighbors to
We may
Neighbors.
have him on speed dial.
And there is there's a renewed effort in the last few years by our police chief to encourage the community policing. So I think they're available for outreach, and we can certainly put them in touch with you. Sounds like you've already got the relationship with Mr. Sonyer, so I would certainly encourage that. I think it's reassuring to most people that this specific incident wasn't gang related. It was more of a I don't know how you say it, ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend situation that was not they were passing in each other and made remarks. So, but we would be happy to follow up.
Yeah, and I'm happy to hear you say it's not gang-related. That's certainly something that's been flying around the community. Apparently there's colors, for whatever that means, showing up in the community. It's another issue that we just want to make sure.
We do also have that program, so we would definitely go out there and work with you as a community member.
Okay. Ms. Teeter?
Yes, thank you for being here, John. John and I are friends. He's next-door neighbors to my daughter and her family. This stabbing took place 5 minutes from my grandchildren being in that same area where it had happened. I am wondering if possibly a neighborhood meeting with Mr. Sonyer could take place. And there's a lot of issues and concerns. At a shower I was at the other day, many people were talking about this. So it's a very serious problem. They were told it was gang-related, and I told them I'd never even heard of the South Gang and the North Gang. So I'm glad that you came forward this evening. Thank you.
Ms. Carson?
John, I think everything that I was going to say has been said. I know the police chief runs a very proactive program, and hopefully we are addressing the graffiti as quickly as possible. And just to reassure you that we were all told it was not gang-related, but thank you for coming.
Okay.
And hopefully we can get something out there that works for you all, and everybody feels that there's something we can do to move this forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McEldowney?
Thanks for coming, Mr. Presswich. I was actually going to make the same suggestion, Mr. Flannery, that we try and coordinate a neighborhood meeting. I know after the event that took place in the Northern Range about a year and a half ago now, that was a really effective way to bring folks together, talk about some concerns in general, get some face time with the PD, with folks that might not otherwise have those discussions. And it's a great chance to dispel some of the myths. I think people are frankly pleasantly surprised when they look at our crime statistics versus our neighbors to the north, south, east, and west. Or not so much to the east, I guess, but the neighbors around us. We fare pretty darn well. But it's an event like this that comes out of nowhere that I think shakes everybody. Mm-hmm. And so I would love to see if we could put something like that together to help keep folks involved, because I think that was the other thing that I saw with that last meeting, is that it helped wake some folks up that may not have been otherwise involved. And I've seen them stay involved, which has been great. So hopefully we can help make that happen sooner than later for you.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for coming, sir. Next person is Joy Bishop. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. When I moved to Commerce City years ago, I was impressed with all of the wonderful family-friendly activities occurring throughout the year, such as neighborhood and outreach picnics, 4th of July celebration, the huge Memorial Day parade, to name a few. Several weeks ago, Mike Cheney, the Secretary of the Community Enterprise Board of Directors, announced their plans to raffle off $1,000 to help with the expenses of Derby Days and a trip for several board members to the Noosa Conference in Alaska. A raffle is a form of gambling licensed by the state of Colorado. Last week, when I picked up a copy of the Neighborhood News published by Community Enterprise, the large ad for Derby Days stated that there would be a beer tent at this event. They will be coming in front of a special meeting of the Liquor Board tomorrow at 1 p.m. to request a liquor license for Derby Days. Community Enterprise received a grant from the Commerce City Quality Community Foundation again this year. The city partners with them on Derby Days, as do Adams County School District 14, the Cultural Council, and other organizations. All of the outreach picnics, 4th of July events, and past Derby Days were successful, well-attended events without serving alcohol. I can't imagine the city and the school district would be supporting and condoning such an irresponsible example being set by a local nonprofit community organization who alleges to support family-friendly gatherings and our children of all ages. There are thousands of deaths every year caused by alcohol. Gambling and alcohol addicts are known to spend money on their addictions instead of spending it on rent, utilities, and food for their children. Why would we encourage this type of behavior, which is usually learned at an early age by example? What message are we teaching our children and young people by using gambling and alcohol at a large community event? We need to teach by example in this community. We need to teach by being the walking, talking, and living examples for our children and our youth. And in my estimation, this does not do that. Everyone that I have spoken to about this says they do not need alcohol at Derby Days. That is not what Derby Days is. Even the manager over at McDonald's this evening, she was appalled that they were going to serve alcohol at Derby Days. Her father died because he was an alcoholic. I think we need to look at this and look at the example that we're setting for our youth and our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Flannery, if you would send the gambling part to the police department, I know the rules there, but that's not what I do right now. So, and then as far as the liquor license, that's handled through the liquor board.
That's correct.
And this is not a city event. So, thank you for your comments. And I have a couple people here, Mr. Benson.
The city logo is on their ad, sir.
Yes, we do help support it, but it is a community event. Mr. Benson?
Yes, I know I've had the occasion in the past to get a couple of special event liquor licenses, and it seems like we were required to put up an insurance policy indemnifying the city and everybody concerned against any problem that might occur. Once you add alcohol to an event, insurance goes up quite a bit. And I'm wondering, does the liquor board would have the authority to require an insurance policy, I believe. Mr. Gaylor, what is your take on that?
That's one of the conditions that could be attached, but we're treading on an area that City Council has no jurisdiction in. That's strictly the liquor license authority. Right. That's why you appointed them. It's their responsibility to handle applications of this nature.
But the liquor authority has the authority.
If they felt that was necessary or appropriate. Right.
An insurance policy indemnifying everybody concerned. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bullock?
Ms. Bishop didn't state her name, address or anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. Joy Bishop, 6491 Glencoe Street, here in Commerce City.
And that was probably my fault. I get so used to talking to you that I
I
could
know.
probably tell you what it is. Okay. Thank you for coming forward. Mr. Flannery, if you will make sure that Ms. Bishop knows what all the steps are and
Yes.
where it goes from there.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, there's only one set of minutes before council this evening, and they're the minutes of the meeting of March 28th, 2011. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Ms. Teeter?
Yes, move approval of the regular meeting minutes of March 28th, 2011.
Ms. Snyder?
Second the motion.
I have a motion to I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 28th. Is there any discussion, either Mr. Benson or Mr. McEldowney?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
What was the date of the meeting on which we're going to have a verbatim transcript? What was that meeting?
April something, the first Monday in April.
That would be April 4th.
Okay.
So it's the April 4th meeting that we were talking about last time.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr.
That's
Benson,
correct.
Councilman Benson, I believe that those minutes are going to be coming before you the 23rd of May. Is that correct?
But that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that this was not that date.
Also, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Councilman Johnson wasn't present for the...
But he's not here tonight.
Oh, that's right, never mind, thank you.
So he'll have to vote long distance if he were.
Thank you.
You were just trying to check me out, weren't you?
I
Figure out
was,
whether I knew
yes.
where we were. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Benson?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a motion and a second before to approve the minutes of March 28th, 2011. Voice vote, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Mr. Marino, did you have? Okay. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, there's three resolutions that are not included on the consent agenda tonight, which we didn't even have a consent agenda. They're all the result of City Council's program for business incentives. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address council on any of these resolutions? If not, we're going to go into a discussion with council. The first is Resolution 2011-22, a resolution approving a business incentive for the Harvest Asian Cuisine Restaurant, doing business as Yum Asian Fusion Cuisine and Sushi. Mr. Gaylor or Mr. Flannery, is there anything that needs to be brought up on those?
There is staff that's prepared to explain to the council what these three business incentive resolutions contain.
Okay.
Also, we can address in any discussion all three at the same time. You just vote separately.
Does council have any questions, Mr. Marino?
I was just going to ask, like last time, before we make any motions, if we could get a brief update for the benefit of the community of the incentives and what they're going to do.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, in that case, I'd like to invite, do you want me to? Brittany Morris, our Economic Development Director.
Okay. Good evening. We seem to be hanging out at all the same places. It's getting scary.
It's true. Brittany Morris, Director of Economic Development, and in a moment I will introduce Michelle Hill, who is our unofficial program administrator for the incentive program. But quickly, I did want to remind everyone that the program does expire June 1st, so please get your applications in before that date. We did send out, or we're about to send out postcards to those residents who applied for residential home improvements to remind them that they are eligible for that incentive. It's something we did last year, and that's where we got the big wave, and we're doing it again just to make sure that all of our residents are aware of the program before it expires. Same thing for home builders. And then we're reaching out to the business community, but please apply before June 1st. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Hill, our unofficial program administrator, to talk about the 3 incentives tonight.
Okay. Mr. Bullock, did you have a comment before they spoke, or?
I think that Michelle will address it. I just want the addresses being told of the different businesses so people can figure out where they are in the city.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
you.
Mayor and members of council, thanks for letting me come before you tonight. With your permission, I'll go ahead and go through all 3 of the resolutions at one time and address any questions that you have. The first one is Resolution 2011-22, as the mayor said, approving business incentives for Harvest Asian Cuisine Restaurant, doing business as Yum Asian Fusion Cuisine and Sushi. They're located in the Reunion Village at 18220 East 104th Avenue, Suite 107. That is the NCAP restaurant. They have applied for existing retailer incentives, which is a 5% rebate of the sales tax that they collected in 2010 to be used to market the business. Are there any questions on that one? Thank you. The second is Resolution 2011-23, approving business incentives for Barpal Investments, LLC. Barpal Investments owns a property that until recently was vacant, located at 6795 East 49th Avenue. And that's the northwest corner of 49th Drive and Newport down in the Stapleton Field Industrial Park. The company operates by constructing and developing and leasing warehouse and industrial space. They plan to build a 4,800 square foot warehouse and office building estimated at a value of $400,000. They've applied for existing business incentives, which will provide a 10% rebate of the sales and use tax on that capital investment, as well as 50% rebate of their building permit and plan check fees. The total estimated incentive is $3,046. Are there any questions on that one? The third and final is Resolution 2011-25, approving business incentives for Summit Renewable Solutions, LLC. This business will actually be moving into the building that Barpal Investments is constructing. They've applied for incentives for the $20,000 estimated capital investment to buy office equipment, computers, other tools that they will need. That company operates primarily in managing distressed asset management and sales, as well as consulting, and primarily for the power industry equipment is what they handle. They have applied for prospective business incentives, a 10% rebate of the a 10% rebate of the user sales tax on that capital investment. In addition, they are going to be creating 4 jobs. So the total of the incentives is estimated at $2,070. Are there any questions on that one? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, just one more time for the audience. What is that date to get your June 1st? Okay. So one more chance. Mr. Marino, do you have a comment?
Prepared to make a motion.
Oh, okay. We're going to start with the first one. Okay, so the first one is Resolution 2011-22, the resolution approving business incentive for Harvest Asian Cuisine Restaurant, doing business as Yum Asian Fusion Cuisine and Sushi. Mr. Marino.
Move approval of Resolution 2011-22.
Mr. McEldowney.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2011-22. Will the city attorney please read the title?
Title reads, Resolution Approving Business Incentive for Harvest Asian Cuisine Restaurant, Inc., DBA Yum Asian Fusion Cuisine and Sushi.
Had a motion and a second. City attorney has read the title. Request a a voice vote, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. And if you haven't had a chance to get up there and eat, that's a great place. And talk to the owner. She's got one heck of a background. It was really interesting talking to her. Okay, the next is Resolution 2011-23, a resolution approving business incentive for Bar Pal Investments, LLC. Mr. McEldowney?
Move to approve Resolution 2011-23.
Ms. Snyder?
Second the motion.
A motion and a second to approve Resolution 2011-23. Will the city attorney please read the title?
Title reads, Resolution Approving Business Incentive for Barbell Investments, LLC.
Okay, I've had a motion and a second. City attorney has read the title. Request a voice vote, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion passes. Last one is Resolution 2011-25, resolution approving business incentive for Summit Renewable Solutions, LLC. Mr. Marino?
Move approval of Resolution 2011-25.
Ms. Snyder?
Second the motion.
Had a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2011-25. Will the city attorney please read the title?
Title reads, Resolution Approving Business Incentive for Summit Renewable Solutions, LLC.
Okay. Request a voice vote, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. And one more time, what was that date again? June 1st. Okay. There's actually two emergency ordinances on the agenda for tonight's meeting. The first is Ordinance 1861, an ordinance amending the franchise between City of Commerce City and United Power Incorporated to extend the term of the franchise. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the council on this ordinance? If not, I would entertain a motion to introduce and approve Ordinance 1861 by council as seated. Mr. McEldowney?
So moved.
Ms. Teeter?
Second the motion?
Mr. Marino, did you have a...
Discussion.
I'm sorry?
Discussion.
Discussion, sir?
I just actually had a question for staff on this. The franchise agreements that we approve with the two utilities that we operate with in Commerce City, Excel and United Power, we collect a franchise fee from residents. I was just wondering what the amount of that fee is from each utility, or if it varies, or I'm not sure.
Mayor and Councilmember Moreno, the franchise fees we collect every year are actually mandated by state statute. The utilities collect them for us. And I do have that number. Let me find it here for a second. For United Power, it is about $436,000 for last year. For Excel Energy, it's about $1.8 million.
Thank you. That's all.
You okay? Terrific. Nice number, huh? Okay, I have a motion and a second. Would the city attorney please read the title?
Okay, prior to reading the title, I'd like to bring to council's attention that the ordinance incorporates the agreement as an exhibit. And if you notice on page 1 of the agreement, that's on page 30 of your agenda documents, that there's a typographical error where it refers to September 13, 2011. That should be July 13, 2011. That's in the second to last whereas clause. And then in the section 18.6-2 of the amendment to the United Power franchise agreement, it again refers to May 13. That should be July 13. So the extension is to July 13, 2011 as a point of clarification. Title reads, an emergency ordinance amending the franchise between the City of Commerce City and United Power, Inc. to extend the term of the franchise.
Okay, I've had a motion and a second. City attorney has read the title. We need a roll call vote on this, please. There we go. Showing 8 yeses, motion passes. Thank you. Next ordinance is 1862, ordinance amending the franchise between the City of Commerce City and Public Service Company of Colorado, doing business as Xcel Energy, to extend the term of that franchise. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address council on this ordinance? Seeing not, I will entertain a motion to introduce and approve ordinance 1862 by council as seated. Ms. Teeter?
Yes, move to approve ordinance 1862 on first reading.
Ms. Snyder?
Second the motion?
I have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the city attorney please read the title?
Title reads, an emergency ordinance amending the franchise between the City of Commerce City and Public Service Company of Colorado, DBA Xcel Energy, to extend the term of the franchise.
Okay, I've had a motion and a second. City attorney's read the title. Request roll call vote, please. I'm not lit at least. Oh, there we go. Mr. McEldowney, would you hit one more time? Thank you. Showing 8 yeses, motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a number of study items for this evening. The first one being Xcel Energy Cherokee Power Plant 24-inch natural gas pipeline. Mr. Flannery, would you introduce staff to present this particular item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to ask Darren Sterling, city engineer, to introduce this issue.
Thank you. Evening, sir.
Good evening.
Always nice to see you.
Thank you. Same here. This evening we have Xcel Energy here to present their Cherokee natural gas pipeline, and at that I'm going to turn it over to Preston Gibson to present that to you, as well as some of his other staff.
How are you, sir?
Good, thank you, Honorable Mayor. My name is Preston Gibson. I'm an area manager with Xcel Energy. My address is 5460 West 60th Avenue, Arvada. And I really, again, appreciate your time, and it's good to be before you talking about a project of monumental importance to Xcel Energy. But before I start, I want to thank you for your previous motion and approval of our franchise extension. We're working very closely with staff on that, and I think that'll give us the amount of time we need to conclude those discussions. Let me, before I begin, introduce our team, because we do have a team here. In case questions arise that I'm unable to answer, we have Cheryl Dietrich. Cheryl, if you'll raise your hand or stand up. Cheryl is doing a lot of our right-of-way acquisition and negotiation work, as well as processing applications, and I'm sure in the near future we'll have an application here at Commerce City. And then Chris Hardig. Chris is the engineer and project manager on this particular project. And then Paul Heald. Paul is with our consultant. He's an engineer with URS and has been very involved in this project for the last number of months. Let me begin by telling you that we worked last year during the legislative session with a coalition of policymakers and legislators to support the passage of Colorado's Clean Air, Clean Jobs Act. You'll probably remember those discussions. It was quite a lengthy process and received a lot of press at the time. And we did this because we were essentially to the point where we were going to be faced with federal regulations, air quality regulations promulgated by the EPA, if we didn't take action and move forward quickly with our own plans. We didn't want to be subject, in other words, to their plans. We wanted to create our own Clean Air, Clean Jobs plan. And under the Act, we were required to propose a multi-year plan to reduce our emissions of nitrogen oxides by 70 to 80% or greater from 900 megawatts of coal-fired generation by 2018 and meet reasonably foreseeable environmental regulations. In meeting the requirements of the legislation, our objective was to develop and advocate for potential emissions reduction plans that will provide clean, reliable power without burdening customers, of course, with enormous costs. We studied literally hundreds of options in developing our Clean Air, Clean Jobs program, and following approval of the legislation by the legislature and signing of that legislation into law by Governor Ritter at the time, we began work with the Public Utilities Commission. And we presented many alternatives for the Public Utilities Commission to consider when they were developing essentially the implementation plan of Clean Air, Clean Jobs. And they heard from more than 30 participants in the process. And we thought the process was very fair, and it resulted in a plan that's going to significantly reduce our emissions here in Colorado. The PUC approved the Clean Air, Clean Jobs plan, as you can see, on December 15, 2010, last year. Now, these are essentially the components of the plan. We needed to retire our coal-fired unit at Valmont Station in Boulder, and then if you look at the Cherokee units, Cherokee 1, 2, 3, and 4, the bottom right of your slide, we're essentially going to close Cherokee 1, 2, and 3. These are old facilities. They were built back, I think, beginning 1957, 1958, and added on in succeeding years. They're coal-fired, and they will be closed, and then essentially Unit 4 is going to be repowered or refueled with natural gas. It'll be a new facility in that current location of Unit 4. And basically, it's going to very significantly reduce our emissions in this state, especially along the Front Range here. So, unfortunately, we don't have enough fuel, natural gas fuel, for this facility currently. We do have one 24-inch gas line that provides natural gas to this area, but we need an additional 24-inch line. And this would be a new natural gas transmission pipeline. It's a high-pressure gas line, about 1020 psi, 34 miles long. It essentially will start at Fort Lupton and move south from Fort Lupton through Weld County, through Lochbuie, through the northern part of Adams County and city of Brighton, and then unincorporated Adams County, and then it will traverse through Commerce City. And I think you've seen a map in your packet for this meeting tonight. And we also have a map in a few minutes that we'll show you, and we'll talk in more detail about how we have selected what we call the preferred route. We will not call this at this point the final route, but it's the preferred route. And at this time, I do want to tell you that we are very early in the process. This project won't even be started. The construction won't be started for about 2 more years. So we're early on, and we wanted to reach out to you and get your thoughts and your input before we go out into the community. And we think within the next month or so, we will be out with a couple of meetings in the community to try to find out what their concerns are and if they have any information that we haven't already considered in our analysis. But we have a very, very thorough public outreach program planned. As I mentioned, the benefit from this pipeline and from Clean Air, Clean Jobs is cleaner air, resulting in an 80 to 90% reduction in CO2, nitrogen oxides, and sulfur oxides. And the other point I should make is it augments our natural gas system, especially for not only for downtown Denver needs, but for communities along the route, for Brighton and Commerce City and Adams County, where you might expect some future growth. So it does provide the opportunity to serve for the potential future gas needs of your community and others. One question that's, of course, always asked is pipeline safety. It's amazing how many regulations that, I mean, we could probably bring in wheelbarrows full of regulations that were governed by the U.S. Department of Transportation, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the Colorado Public Utilities Commission, and I think it just goes on and on from there. But we have very significant regulations, and we're not only meeting those, we're exceeding those regulations. An example is the extra mainline valves and shutoffs. We're required to have those every 8 miles. We're going to put those in every 6 miles. They're remotely operated. They're continuously monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. If there's ever any abnormality, we can shut those off immediately. So we have very, very high pipeline safety standards. And then during the installation, there are corrosion prevention program used to eliminate metal loss during the life of the pipeline. I'm not an engineer, but if I can remember this correctly, somebody could correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's called fusion bond epoxy, and that will be bonded to the metal pipeline itself. And then when the pipeline is actually constructed, we not only have a either do it ourselves or have a contractor build that line. We have another contractor that actually inspects it. They inspect all the wells. It's third-party inspection with an X-ray equipment. And so they're tested over and over again. I can tell you then also it undergoes a hydrostatic pressure test after it's completely constructed at about 1.5 times the operating pressure of the line. And then beyond that, it's inspected internally with state-of-the-art equipment, an internal, they call it a pig, that they can actually put through the line, and they can pinpoint every single, if there's a very small piece of corrosion, internally or externally, it will spot that, and we can, and through GPS, it will tell us exactly where that is, and we can go fix that. So we're very, very focused on safety of this equipment. It's patrolled on an annual, semi-annual, and quarterly intervals based on the location and population density, and the entire pipeline will be inspected at least every 7 years, again with these inline inspection tools. Route selection is very important, and I can tell you we have looked at between 20 and 30 potential routes and then combinations of those routes. And some of the factors that we consider are the location of wetlands, parks, rivers, creeks, endangered species, rights-of-way, easements, and et cetera. And one of the things that we have tried to do with this line is stay within existing public rights-of-way and our own right-of-way, and then and easements where we have those. So we don't have to actually go out and acquire new easements, new right-of-way to make this project viable. We think we've done a pretty good job of citing it, and again, we have a preferred alignment, and that's the one that was shown in your information that you received. But we do have many of them that we've considered. So with that, I think I'm going to ask Chris Hardig to come up and explain some of the detail behind the route selection. He can actually walk through that, and I think Darren is going to put that map up for us. And after he gets done talking about the route selection, I have just a couple more slides, and I'll be done. So, Chris?
Good evening. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to present this evening. I don't know if I have is there a pointer anywhere? Or, basically, I guess to walk you through the route, we'll start on the south end down near the Cherokee Power Plant. And if you could scroll, I don't think I have control of this, do I? Is this a pointer?
That's a pointer.
Okay. And then that's also the up button. Okay. Right here is where the Cherokee Power Plant is. The pipeline basically will terminate at this point in order to power the new combustion turbine combined cycle units that will replace units 1, 2, and eventually 3 over the next 5 to 6 years. Basically by 2017, the entire power plant will be repowered with natural gas. From this point, the route traverses up York Street and then heads to the east to make the crossing of the Platte River. This crossing here will be a bored crossing with what's called directional drilling technology. Basically, it's a drilling rig turned on its side, and it can be guided in a curved pattern to go under the river and come back up to depths where we can actually get back to it, tie on, and proceed on down the line. Will not disturb the river channel flow nor the bike path going along the Platte with this construction. Basically, it won't disturb any of the recreational activities going on through the river bottom at that time. From there, the route traverses along 64th Avenue till we get to Highway 265, and again turns to the northeast up to 80th Avenue, and then we head to the east here to get over to Highway 2. And in this portion of the route, basically all of this would be in public road rights-of-way. Once we get to this point, we've been told that Commerce City has acquired or annexed at least a strip along the Arsenal boundary here that we've proposed laying the pipeline in to get outside of the highway right-of-way and limit the disruption to traffic in Highway 2. Once we get to Piccadilly Road here, I believe that's Piccadilly, right? We turn north here through, we'll try to obtain private easement up to this point, or is that our transmission right away there? This is, we own this transmission? Okay. This portion of our electric transmission right away, we own this property here, and we're going to install the pipeline within that existing right of way, as well as across in 104th Avenue to where we exit Commerce City's city boundaries at that point. The reason for this route selection, pretty much as Preston had stated earlier, it seemed to be the minimal impact to the public. We tried to stay out of populated areas as much as possible. If you notice, we don't have an overall route slide, but this route swings out to the east. It doesn't take the most direct route up to the Fort Lupton site, where we're going to connect to the supply lines from various interstate pipeline companies. Going that direct route would have encumbered many more areas of high-density development. So we swung the route out to the east to more come down through agricultural, rural lands, and stay in areas where we wouldn't be impacting the public as much. Obviously, once we get down to towards the Cherokee Power Plant site, there really wasn't much we could do to avoid that. We just get pinched into this corridor where there's a lot of development, and basically swung over on 80th Avenue there because of the in the right-of-way there isn't as much in the way of curb and gutter. It's more of a borrow ditch type of area that we aren't tearing up as much infrastructure. And then basically coming down Brighton Boulevard or 265, to get into the site again, we'll do what we can to minimize the impacts to the public. We do hope to run several crews in this area to try and, while we can't, mitigate totally the impacts of the public, we can at least impact the duration of time that we'll be in there if we're allowed to run multiple crews, kind of spread them out and work towards each other or away from each other to get the project done as quick as possible through, the higher density development areas. Are there any other questions?
Mr. Benson?
Yes, thank you. You're going to maintain a pressure between 10 and 20 PSI inside the pipe?
No, it's actually 1,020 PSIG.
Okay, that's what 1,020 PSI.
Yeah, that'll be what's called the maximum allowable operating pressure. Our normal operating pressure is going to be around 750 PSIG in the early stages of the life of this pipeline. The extra 250 so pounds are to accommodate the growth along the route as development occurs.
So that's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
It's an enormous amount of pressure, yes, it is. Right. The pipeline will be designed in accordance with the Department of Transportation CFR Code Part 192, which governs the design of interstate pipelines, and which public service company has adopted as our design standards to be built according to. As Preston mentioned, we've gone a little beyond what those standards and code regulations required by placing automatic shutoff valves every 6 miles instead of every 8 miles. Basically, the code says you can't be any farther than 4 miles from a shutdown device. We're going to reduce that to no farther than 3 miles between shutdown devices.
But that means that if you have a leak, you can have 6 miles times a 24-inch pipe that could leak out into the atmosphere, doesn't it? You could have that, and within that 6 miles, at least it would go down to atmospheric pressure.
Well, if everything works according to plan, we'll be monitoring the pressure at those points.
Right.
And as our load control center is monitoring the pipe, they notice that start to happen. They will, check the pressures along the line to determine where the leak is at, and then shut the appropriate valves to control that flow.
At what point does it shut down automatically?
I don't know exactly what the operating guidelines are just yet. I don't think those are totally, it's more of a call, you'll notice the pressure is going down and continually going down at a certain point. So then you'll shut in valves, and then you'll start seeing pressure climb on one side of the valve, but continue to go down on the other side, so you know you've got it isolated. You are correct. More than likely, between those two valves that you shut down, the rest of the gas, depending on how serious the break would be or the rupture, and by rupture I would say more from a third-party damage, not the pipe rupturing itself.
Generally, when you put something under that kind of pressure, it produces heat. Just the pressure itself produces heat.
Mm-hmm.
How much heat will be produced in this gas by putting it under 750 pounds per square inch, or 1,000, whatever?
More than likely, it'll be at ambient ground temperature by the time it comes in. We're not compressing the gas. You're right, it does warm up as you compress it, but after it's gone through the line for a period of time and under flowing conditions, it cools back to the ambient temperature. So our flowing temperatures are generally about 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay. Is it going to be pure methane?
Well, it will be whatever the constituents of natural gas, which the major component is methane.
No oxygen in the line?
Pardon me?
No oxygen in the line?
No, no oxygen in the line.
All right. And where?
I guess I should, once we get down to the Cherokee power plant, there is the plan to put in air blending at that point to mix it with our air blended gas system to go into the Denver metro area. Basically, all the gas in this area is blended gas. The power plants would rather have unblended gas, so we bring it unblended to the power plant, then have blending facilities at the power plant to move it on into the rest of the metro area.
And is this gas going to be used both to supply residential and commercial gas and to burn to generate electricity?
Yes,
Both?
it'll be used for both.
Both, okay. Where on, let's start with Highway 2, where would that be on Highway 2? On the Arsenal side or the other side, or where?
We've proposed to staff, I think at earlier meetings prior to my becoming involved with this project, but it was proposed to be on the Arsenal side. And within, from what we understood, there's about a 200-300-foot strip that Commerce City has annexed or has acquired from the Arsenal. And we've proposed that we place the pipe within that strip to get it out of the road right away, and minimizing the impacts of construction to traffic on Highway 2.
And I know, I guess normally methane is odorless, but you guys put something into it to make it smell so that you can detect a gas leak. Will the gas in this pipeline have that smell?
Yes, it would. Up at the Fort Lupton site where we do take on the supply from what is the one of the CIG pipelines, and then what's called the High Plains Pipeline, which is a combined ownership pipeline between Public Service Company and CIG. But at that point, we will be putting an odorization system in up there, and the gas will be odorized at the front end.
Yeah, I
of the
guess you call it
project.
odorizing it, okay.
Yes.
What about on 96th? Where would it be, on the refuge side of that, too?
Yes, we would be. The plan would be to be on the south side of
And is that-
96, and hopefully on the south side of the property fence, within the buffer zone.
Is that north-south connection, is that Chambers?
This one here, right here? Are you talking about the one on the east side of the
No, the
east
one on
road?
the north side of the refuge, right, where it connects to 96. Is that Chambers? That goes
That's
north up to
Potomac
that
heading
104th?
north, Jim.
I thought that was Potomac. I was wrong
okay.
earlier.
Potomac, okay. And where would it go? I guess that leaves about 3 miles, maybe 4 miles, 3 miles on 104th. Where would it go on 104th?
At 104th, like you said, it's probably 1, 2, 3, a little more than 4 miles.
Right.
We exit Commerce City's city boundaries there, and then I guess
Like
just
on the north
east
side
of Tower.
or the south
Pardon?
side?
Oh, on the north-south side of the road? I don't- yeah. Cheryl Diedrich kind of knows more about where the
Okay.
routing has been proposed so far.
Okay, so we go down Potomac, right south of 104th is actually our fee property that we're going to be running it. It's 210 feet easement and actually fee property. So that's going from Gun Club over there. Yeah, there you go, all the way, going west. Then going down there, that's Potomac. It'll be on the west side of the road. Then going down 96th over west again, that will be on the north side of the road. And there's actually existing right-of-way in there, so that will be in the road right-of-way.
It'll be on the north side of 96, did you say?
Yes,
And what about on 104th?
Are we going to be in the south side? Yeah, the plan was to be in the south side of 96,
All right.
within the annexed.
Okay, I'm sorry, that is correct,
And
yes, because within the annexation.
what about on 104th?
104th, we are actually out of road right-of-way. It's in our fee property, which is south. We have a parcel that runs all the way from Gun Club, right there, and then
See,
all the way over.
I don't know
This
where
fee.
Gun Club is. I don't think that's a
Right
road that
there.
exists in our area. Where?
It's the far east point of the
Right.
east-west run here, just south of 104th. Like Cheryl's saying, we're not going to actually be in 104th right-of-way. We're south of the 104th right-of-way in our electric transmission right-of-way,
Fee proper- It's actually fee property.
and we actually own that property.
Well, you know, if any leak does occur, I guess Excel would indemnify Commerce City for any damage that might result. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, any place we operate, yeah, we're fully responsible for any damages caused by our pipeline. Now,
Well,
if
you
they're
know-
caused by a third party, then it'll be determined who's liable for.
Right, all right. You know, you said that you were trying to stay out of residential areas. This is the area that I represent, and you're splitting it right in half, right down the middle on 104th. That doesn't seem like you made any effort at all to avoid residential areas, to me. You're going right down the middle of Reunion.
You're speaking of this,
Look over your shoulder, Jim.
so you're referring to this stretch here?
Yes. The 104th stretch.
Yeah, that section is within an electric transmission right-of-way that we own the power.
Well, I understand that, but you said you were trying to avoid residential areas, and you're splitting my ward right in half with your proposed gas line.
That is a existing corridor. There are several pipelines along that corridor that go from Gun Club all the way over to Potomac. So
What
that's
kind
why
of-
we've chosen to go ahead and use that corridor, because it's already encumbered by pipelines.
What kind of pipelines?
There's several different, there's electric transmission, which are the high power lines.
Right.
And then there's a couple other, and I'll have to get back with you on the details of that.
Are
But
there
I believe-
gas pipeline, methane pipelines?
I'm not sure. I'll have to get the details of that.
I'd like
back
to
you.
know
Yeah.
about that, because I'm kind of wondering why you don't just go up, all the way up Highway 2 to where it intersects with I-76, and then take I-76 all the way to Fort Morgan, or you're going to Fort Lupton, is that right, or Fort?
Yes, we are.
Right.
Councilman Benson, to help you there, that stretch that you're referring to is where they have the big towers, where they own that in fee? That's the area they're referring to.
I understand.
Okay.
And again, we did as much as we could to avoid areas that are already developed. I mean, I understand, this cuts through what is developable ground.
Well, it's not only developable, it's been developed on both sides of 104th, and it's going to be developed a lot more over the next 10 years. I mean, it's going to become very, very developed, and you've got a 24-inch methane pipeline going right down the middle of a huge residential area. I don't think my people are going to like this at all. But anyway, I'm only one person on the council,
I actually had comments to pick up right where Mr. Benson was heading. I too honed in on the comment that the best efforts were made to try and avoid the presently developed areas. And the area that Mr. Benson highlights there in your existing corridor, while it's currently in your your property, it also is within just mere feet of residences that move back to that corridor. Folks that obviously have full knowledge of the high transmission lines that were mentioned, but I don't think have any sense or had any sense that a 24-inch gas line might take up residence in that corridor as well. I think Mr. Benson was on the right track, and I too looked at the fact that if you were to continue along the refuge easement on the refuge side of 96th, that would give you a more significant buffer between homes through that corridor and allow you to continue due east out toward across 470 and then make your bend to the north where you show bending north in the current illustration. There are no homes save in anywhere near the proximity that you would have by continuing up the 104th corridor or down the Potomac corridor. I think you can gain a more significant buffer by staying south of 96th along the refuge there, given the buffer that we have within the city. You'd have the roadway plus the easement within the refuge that's city property versus federal property. I guess that when I look at the overall alignment and I look at the list of cities impacted, it's fairly clear that Commerce City is in a unique position relative to proximity to existing homes. And I think that's something that we need to look very, very carefully at, because, you know, as much as I love the idea of seeing the coal-fired power plants go the way of the dinosaur, I do have concern about where those gas lines route, because when they have an issue, it's not typically a minor issue. It obviously makes quite the scene. So I happen to live mere blocks from where that would back up along 104th there, and no folks through that entire corridor. So I would say let's look at some alternatives and have those at hand, because I can all but guarantee you're going to hear comments that suggest that needs to be done. I think Mr. Benson suggested that, looking at, and I guess I know that along the E470 corridor, for example, we have a utility easement that runs essentially along the whole corridor. I would think that similar arrangements exist on the other major highways, 85, 76, et cetera. And by and large, those areas are not abutting residential, but they're abutting commercial, industrial properties. There are larger open spaces to either side of those corridors. And so should there be an issue, your impact is a lot less than you'll see if you run through neighborhoods. I mean, you're running through neighborhoods. Mm-hmm.
Well, this is great discussion. In fact, this is exactly why we're doing the preliminary discussion of this. And we have actually made some changes already. I know meeting with Commerce City, we actually did change some of that. So this is great, and this is why we're here, is to hear this discussion and different thoughts of different routes. And like we said, we've done a lot of study. There's been a lot of thought put into this, but that's why we're here, preliminary discussion with that. So, Preston, do you want to take over from here?
Sure.
Okay.
Unless there are any other questions on the alignment.
I guess my last question, there was suggestion of a meeting, a public meeting. What is the timeline? I didn't catch that in the PowerPoint. I may have looked past that. When are those anticipated?
Let me also say that this is the preferred alignment. We appreciate your comments, and Councilor Benson, your comments. You know, we have, again, studied over 20 alignments, and this alignment is not cast in concrete at this point. And that's the reason we're here talking to you. It's the reason we're talking to the community. And it could change based on comments. But today, this remains our preferred alignment, but we need to go back and think about it. In terms of could we go, Darren, could we go, are we done talking about the alignment now? If we are, we can go back.
For the moment.
I had a question.
Oh, okay. Okay. Right.
Yes, I do. I also agree with my other two council members, this is not going to go well with our residents up on 104th and in that area. You had mentioned having the meetings, and I think you're going to find that information come out then, too. A question, how deep are these lines going to be placed underground?
I think it very, can you tell me the depth? 4 feet?
4 feet, okay. And how many of them currently, these type of lines, do run in Colorado? I have no idea.
How many lines of this size and nature? How many lines?
Carrying the natural gas?
Our consultant's saying there's dozens of lines like this in Colorado.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, Councilwoman Teeter did ask one of the questions that I was wondering about, how deep the lines will be sunk. You know, I think that there is some cause for concern along 104th and the proximity to neighborhoods in that area. You know, I certainly understand that that route, that alignment may be more convenient for Excel because you already have the land there to go through. And it may, in fact, be more cost-effective for you, but I'm not sure it's in the best interest of the residents that live in that area. So, just my thoughts.
We appreciate your concerns. Thank you.
Yes, this is kind of a physics question, I guess. At what pressure, at this pressure, at what temperature would the methane liquefy or freeze? Maybe it's a chemistry question instead of a physics. I don't know.
Probably 60 below zero.
60 below, okay. Now, if you were to extend this map up to Fort Lupton, if you...
Liquefy.
Well, both, liquefy or freeze. You think 60 below to liquefy at this pressure?
If your
If
your next question is about the extension to Fort Lupton, this shows the entire
Okay.
route. We don't have this on a DVD disc tonight.
Okay, where, can you show me, just point to where on that map Fort Lupton is?
Fort Lupton is this color here,
Okay, and where is this area that we're showing on the screen?
down here. You probably go.
Okay.
This basically, what we have is obviously Commerce City. We go over to Barley, and we extend the line in our existing right-of-way, and then this all is right-of-way that we own, that XL Energy owns. It goes up through this. We have to purchase a little right-of-way here. Then it goes through Brighton, the very east edge of Brighton, and up through Wells County to Fort Lupton.
Just seems like that's a little bit of a circuitous route to get from where you're starting to where you're going. There's probably more of a straight line type route. I understand, just like Mr. Marino said, you own a lot of right-of-way in there, and so that's going to be the cheaper way to go, to use your own right-of-way. But when do you think the first public meeting is going to occur?
Pardon me, the what?
The first public meeting?
We hope to get out in the community within about a month.
Okay, so we'll all get notified of that, I'm
Absolutely.
sure. And okay, everybody will.
We're going to have an enormous amount of notification.
And so can we, will this be just one meeting for Commerce City, or can we have a meeting up in Ward 2? We need to have a
We
meeting.
can have
in-
as many meetings as you need.
Okay.
As many as you need.
If
So
you
if you
could-
need a meeting, let us know and we'll be there.
If you could plan, but this is your meeting, and I would just like for you to plan on having one up there in that area, because I think it'll draw some interest from the people who live there.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with you.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
He'll be gone. Mr. McEldowney?
It seems like Mr. Benson and I are picking up on where each other wants to go here. I guess on the subject of the meetings, I would say, earlier my comments were pointed toward the northern corridor. Those same comments apply as we make the bend at 80th Avenue. We are right alongside residences all through the remainder of that corridor. So, again, I think my sentiments are even more reinforced after seeing the larger map. and how well out of highly developed areas the majority of that corridor runs until it enters the Commerce City community. And so I'll just be very clear that I need to see alternatives that show routing further from our population centers that take advantage of natural buffer zones of more open space, be they highways or otherwise. And I would say that to the tune of the community meetings, we clearly need localized meetings in that area on the southern end of the route in Commerce City and at the northern end of the route in Commerce City to enable folks to get to a meeting that works for them and as much advance notice as we can so we can ensure that folks are present. Thank you, Preston.
Okay, Mr. Marino?
Obviously, based on the timeline, the actual construction of this line is a few years out. This question is for Mr. Sterling. In the presentation, it was said that the impact on traffic would be minimal, but I'm just curious if Public Works has looked at any kind of analysis of what actually the impact to traffic would be, particularly along the roadways.
We have not gotten any information on that yet. This is set in such an early stage. It's very preliminary, so we haven't gotten any of the details yet as to how that's going to look. I've already asked about boring and how far they can bore and stuff like that, which certainly cuts down on the impact to traffic, but we're not anywhere near that stage yet.
Gotcha. And, obviously I hope that that's a big part of the discussion when when the preferred alignment does go forward. I am encouraged by a couple of things that you said in the sense that when you get down near the South Platte, that none of those recreational amenities will be affected. That I think that is a real benefit in that area because I know that those trails are highly used over there. This is a subject that's pretty familiar to me. I worked for State Senator Bruce Whitehead, who carried the legislation last year to implement the Clean Air, Clean Jobs Act. And I think, I neglected to say, as Councilman McEldowney pointed out, that it certainly is a laudable goal that we're transitioning to natural gas, which is cleaner burning than coal is. But I think that, as a city, we have to make sure that we keep our residents and their well-being in mind, and so I think that there was a lot of good feedback that was delivered tonight, and I look forward to the public meetings.
Thank you. Ms. Carson?
I just also wanted to interject that I would be very pleased if you could hold a couple meetings, a couple in the north and a couple in the south. It's our residents that are going to be greatly impacted, and I would certainly like to give them the opportunity to attend these meetings. I think there's going to be a lot of questions. I'm not sure that they're going to be, that the ease of listening to this is going to fall upon ears that are happy about it. So as much as you can be there to address their concerns, and along with Mr. Benson, if I was in my car and driving to Fort Lupton, that certainly isn't the route that I would take. So I know you have reasons for taking that route, but the 104th area really is very concerning, I think, to all of us.
Mr. Bullock?
Thank you for coming, Preston. When you do meet with the community with your maps and everything, along with your preferred alignment, could you also show alternative alignments all the way up at 96 to Gun Club Road? And when you get down in the core of the city on the southern end, going down towards the South Platte and running along the South Platte and meeting up with your coal plant down there. So it shows an alternative that doesn't go through actual core centers, so they can see a good alternative like we can see right here now. Speaking the same and echoing Ms. Carson and Mr. Benson, Highway 2, a straight shot would be right into Fort Lupton. I understand that the red line that you have is property that you own, and it makes it considerably inexpensive to put your line in your own property, but I would love for you to consider the residents in those areas also. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McEldowney, do you have another comment?
Just my last comment, Preston. For those community meetings, I know there was mentioned there were about a dozen other pipelines of this size scattered around the metro area. It might be helpful to just show in context to where some of those others are placed relative to population centers. Obviously, if they've been there and there have been no issues, I think people may have a different sentiment toward having it located within a reasonable a distance that they can conceive of. So it would be a helpful illustration to show that in comparison. Thanks.
Thank you. I do not envy you at all. You know, it would have been nice to go back 100 years and say, this is what we're going to need 100 years from now. When you have a problem that happens today that we have to deal with, and you have to figure out a way to make it work, and how do you get the majority of people to see the benefit of the plan as compared to how we get it solved. You know, some days I think this job is the worst, but, you know, I think you got me beat on a lot of those days. I want to thank you for you coming, presenting it. And
thank you. Mr. Mayor, I have just 2 final slides, if I could show those quickly. And I do appreciate your time tonight. And, you know, if this was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? If you could keep going to the next slide real quickly here. Just a quick project schedule. You'll see where we are. We are very early in the process. And I basically implored upon my team, we've got to get out early and get comments. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
We knew we were going to get these kind of comments. We wanted to have the comments early. But you can see construction won't start until spring of 2013. We're going to be working very closely with your staff. We haven't even applied yet, but we will apply for the permits we need through the city and work very closely. And then the operational, we hope, by 2014, October 1. And then the last slide, please. Well, let's go to the next slide. I think there's one more. And this is how we're going to outreach to the community. Public meetings, direct mail, email, website, hotline, news media, advertising, public service announcements. I don't think we have social media in there, but I'm sure we'll be twittering and all that, or what is it, tweeting or whatever it is. But we'll be doing whatever we need to do to outreach to the community. We're going to have a consultant that works primarily on outreach, so we're going to have, I don't know, probably dozens of meetings over the next couple of years. So we appreciate your comments. We'll take them into consideration. And we thank you for your time tonight. And if you have any questions, you can reach me at any time.
Okay. And again, thank you very much. We've had projects come into the city where people have not told us what was happening, and they blow up in everybody's face. The communication is what keeps it working, you know, and I appreciate you all coming down.
Well, thank you. My concern is we get out in the community before you know about it. We wanted you to hear about it first.
Yeah.
So.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Okay. The next one, update on the neighborhood identification project, which is being led by Community Enterprise. Mr. Flannery, would you introduce staff who will be presenting, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'd like to ask Mr. Mizraim Cordero, intergovernmental manager, to introduce the group.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I think for a few years now, and I think Chris Kramer, who will be speaking at one point during this presentation, knows more about the history than I do. But for several years, there's been groups of citizens, and the city has taken up attempts to identify the different neighborhoods in the historic part of the city. Last year, during the budget retreat in August here in the council chambers, a few members of council expressed interest in having members of the staff talk to folks in the neighborhoods about this effort. And so the city manager's office, the community development department, and the planning department have worked with 3 groups in particular that are being brought together by Community Enterprise. One group is the Community Enterprise Neighborhood Groups, One is the One Community Board, and the other group is Image to Action. And so they've gotten together with two main purposes. One is to, as I said before, identify what the neighborhoods are in the historic part of the city. The second part is to figure out a way by which there could be a partnership among future neighborhood associations, neighborhood groups in the city. And to that end, there's a presentation today. I would like to introduce Christy Jofflin, who's the Executive Director of Community Enterprise, and she'll be doing most of the talking, but Chris Kramer and I will also have a part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I am Christy Jofflin Martin, and I am the Executive Director of Community Enterprise, and I'll be acting as the moderator tonight. And I'm here with the team to share an exciting project, the Neighborhood Boundary Identification Initiative. Our agenda for the evening will cover the following: a brief overview of Community Enterprise, and then we'll hear from the two subcommittees of the Neighborhood Boundary Identification Initiative, the Boundary Naming Team, and the Neighborhood Association Team. Before we begin, I want to make one housekeeping comment that throughout the night that you're going to hear us talk and identify areas by name, and this is only for our speakers to easily identify an area we're talking about. So at Community Enterprise, we believe that everyone deserves to live in a great neighborhood, and every day we provide tools to residents to help them make positive changes in their community. Over the last 13 years, the purpose behind our programs has been and remains to provide a vessel for community participation, to foster a sense of civic pride, and build community cohesion. We were started in 1998 by a group of community members and residents. Their objective was to form a consistent, organized, and resident-driven coalition to strengthen the community. Since the organization's inception, it has played an instrumental role in engaging the wide diversity of individuals, associations, and community groups in Commerce City. Community Enterprise has been especially important as a grassroots planning resource and a catalyst for citizen engagement in historic Commerce City. You may know Community Enterprise best for organizing Derby Days, the Derby Winter Festival, and most recently publishing the Neighborhood News. What you may not know is that we spend a significant amount of time providing opportunities to residents to come together to strengthen their neighborhood. We have two bilingual staff working directly in the neighborhoods to bring neighbors together, which leads me to why we're here tonight: developing neighborhood boundaries and a system to connect those neighbors to City Hall. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to Beverly Bunzel. Bev is a longtime Commerce City resident, Kemp neighbor, recycling advocate, the CCBPA's 2010 Citizen of the Year, Grandma to One, and Imagine Coalition member. Bev is going to take us back to last June when we approached you last and share how we got here.
Thank you, Christy. Good evening, Council, Mayor. As Christy said, I was here in June of last year to make you aware of the Imagine Coalition. This is just a small refresher of that group. From 2005 until December of 2010, nearly 300 residents participated in walkabilities in the core city. After reviewing those results, a group of concerned citizens like myself got together to form the Imagine Coalition. We have a vision of a much better community for a better quality of life for everyone. But how could the coalition get the message across of how we see the city when we walk around or when we drive around? We felt that our continued growing concerns were being heard on deaf ears. So what a better way than a picture? For what they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. The coalition embarked on a photo voice project. Each of the 12 members of the group was given a camera. We beat the streets for 2 weeks. We took pictures of things we liked, things we didn't like, sites we thought we could be approved on, sites that maybe could be corrected. In January of 2010 at Worth Manor, the Photo Voice held an Image to Action policy meeting. There we displayed all of our pictures. It was an invitation to all of the policy-making individuals of the city, such as yourselves. From that meeting, the Imagine Coalition chose 3 main topics. 1, identification and beautification of the neighborhoods. 2, strengthening community collaboration. 3, identifying standing water issues in the neighborhood. We realize that we have some short-term and some long-term goals, but we hope with your help, we can turn our city into the class city that it very well could be. Over the last year, we have worked very hard, and we've made great strides in identifying boundary lines and naming the neighborhoods. Now I want to introduce Sandy Carruthers. Sandy. She's a Commerce City resident, a Kemp neighbor, a senior citizen advocate, and first-time NUSA conference attendee. So I'm going to let Sandy come up and let you know why neighborhood boundaries matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. Mr. Mayor and council members, Mr. City Manager and staff, and citizens in the audience. First, I got to start out with an aside. I hope council appreciates that finally I'm doing it right tonight. I'm speaking on the official agenda. I haven't signed up on the wrong list and tried to speak when I'm not supposed to speak. Commerce City is also my home. I live in the Kemp School neighborhood. I grew up in a small town, rural setting in northeastern Colorado. To me, CC has some small town feel in an urban setting. I mean this in only a positive way. I certainly don't mean it in the country hick way or some of those other ways that small towns are sometimes categorized. I know more of my neighbors here, my immediate neighbors, than any place I've lived since I left home. And small towns do have some good attributes and cohesiveness, and I think through neighborhood identification and groups, we will have an exciting opportunity to create some of that feeling here in an urban setting. My first involvement was with the walkability studies and the Imagine Coalition, and this was an eye-opening experience. It's amazing what you can observe in a neighborhood or a community when you walk through it rather than drive through it quickly. As Bev indicated, I'm going to try to address with you the neighborhood identification boundaries and why they matter to neighborhoods. First, we want to create a sense of pride in our neighborhoods. We want to build a common identity and allow for collaboration on neighborhood and local issues. By this I mean we want to focus efforts on the neighborhood level to identify unique matters for us, but also collaborate or coordinate with our other neighbors on common area issues and get involved in community-wide local issues. To promote local businesses and organizations, and hopefully this can become a mutual two-way process. We want to establish a basis for further interaction. It's very important for us to have a neighborhood voice with the city. We want to create communication pathways with the city, neighbors, police department, etc., to have a collective voice and an organized way for citizens to communicate effectively. We want to develop neighborhood plans where the citizens identify in their own neighborhood their priorities and start resident-initiated projects to make improvements in our neighborhoods and entire city. We want to gather information at the neighborhood level, and again, we want to get organized, have a collective input and involvement directly from the residents in the neighborhood, to give a collective perspective and to form a good basis for outreach. Really, much of this is a simple concept. It's neighbors getting to know neighbors, neighbors working together, to develop buy-in and ownership in our neighborhoods, and to support mutual involvement in our community-wide. In summary, neighborhood identification has exciting potential to help us organize resident-initiated projects to improve our neighborhoods. It will give us a good foundation to work together with Neighbors First, city government, businesses, community groups, nonprofits, and schools to make our city safer, healthier, and more beautiful. I must acknowledge Community Enterprise for their spatial support and facilitation to getting us where we are today, and the Denver Foundation as an important funding source and providing us technical assistance. Also city staff, particularly Chris Kramer and Ms. Cordero, who have assisted us on this initiative. I recently read an article in the paper on the Park Hill community in Denver. One of the residents there was quoted as saying, "People are committed to living here." We also have in Commerce City residents committed to improving our neighborhoods to be a better places to live, learn, work, and play, and embrace all of our diversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. So who is our team? Both Bev and Sandy are members of the Neighborhood Boundary Identification Initiative, and they join the following individuals that have come together to ask other neighbors about where they live. Please stand if you're in the audience and a member of this initiative so council could put a face with your name. As you can see, we have community members, folks at Community Enterprise, and city staff. As Bev said, this program has been resident-led since its inception and has come from the nearly 300 walkability assessments completed to date. Both my agency, Community Enterprise, and the city are acting in a supportive role at this point. Now that you know the team, I'd like to invite Chris Kramer, who you all know well, to come on up and explain the process to date.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. It is a There we go. Sorry about that. As council can probably hear from the presentations tonight by Bev and Sandy, it's been a real pleasure for us at a staff level to work on this project, to work with committed, passionate residents. Is one of the biggest joys we can have. So this has been a great project to help provide support on. I'm just here to talk a little bit about really the process to date, which is a good opportunity to talk about the role that the city's had in this. Again, there's really two different committees working on this project. The part that I've been assisting with is the part looking at identifying what the neighborhood boundaries are and coming up with the names for those. And as you'll hear in a little bit, we're really just at the beginning of that process. It's a somewhat daunting task when you think about going about creating that when there's so many different versions of neighborhoods and neighborhood boundaries and neighborhood names even as we've started. So just to give council a little bit of background of what we've done thus far, the committee that's been working on this, we each went on our own separate ways for a few weeks and had a homework project. That was the name of it, right? The homework project. And we all worked with our representative groups and families and in our cases the fellow colleagues that we have, and we each created a neighborhood boundary map independent of anything else the committee was doing, and everybody brought theirs to the committee, and we compared all of these different versions that we had. And what ended up was through 3 different subcommittee meetings that we've had, there were a lot of similarities. There were some differences, certainly, but there was a good basis to work from. And so I believe what we're going to be doing is taking a lot of those similarities, establishing that as the baseline to then do the subsequent outreach. So I'm going to show you a copy of the draft that is, in essence, a synthesis of everything that has been done so far. Before I even pop it up on the screen, I would like to preface to council, this is a draft. This is a draft map that is going to be the basis for taking it out to the community. So, Christy, if you want to slide that up there. So this is a copy of the draft map, and a few things might pop out at you. There will be plenty of time through this process over the summer for everyone, the community, staff, council, for us to refine this map. The purpose of tonight of showing you this map isn't really to get comments on the accuracy of this map. We know it needs all sorts of work, and that's really not why we're here. We're just trying to show council a copy of this so that you can see the progress that's been made to date and the kind of thing that the committee is working on. Most of the neighborhoods are roughly the same area in size. The committee has stated a preference for them to be somewhat contiguous and also not too gerrymandering, if you will, in their design. Furthermore, the idea was for these to be rooted in historical names that a lot of the residents have been calling these neighborhoods for years. You'll see all sorts of question marks all over this. Those are the kinds of things that we're going to be working on as we go out into the community over the course of the summer. So that's the work that's gone on to date. And at this point, I'll pass it back over to Christy for continuing this presentation.
Thanks, Chris. The Neighborhood Boundary Identification Initiative team believes that engaging residents in this process is going to be crucial to successfully identifying neighborhood boundaries and naming them. So this summer, Neighbors and Community Enterprise will be asking the community. So we have 3 phases of resident engagement that we want to walk you through, what we'll be doing this summer. The first phase will be approaching 20 groups that are already meeting in the community, from the Historical Society to informal neighborhood groups to school PTOs. And we'll conduct this phase through June and early July. The Derby, Monaco, and Irondale areas had a high amount of agreement from initial residents working on the maps. To ensure accuracy, we're going to be visiting 10% of the households in those areas that are identified on the draft map. In all the other areas, we'll be conducting 50 individual interviews with neighbors to pinpoint and to identify areas of debate. And Derby Days will also be another opportunity for many neighbors to provide feedback. For phase 2, after we've gone through and talked with the 50 individuals in the areas that have some area of debate, we're going to go back and do some really intense outreach in those neighborhoods. Again, we'll be hitting 10% of the households in July and August. And Pioneer Park will be a great opportunity to meet more of the community as well. In phase 3, we hope to finalize the boundaries and come back to council. We're truly committed to reaching deep in the community and making boundaries and the names resonate with the residents who live there. Now that you know why boundaries are important and how we're going to engage the community in the process, we move on to the neighborhood association team, and Ms. Cordero is leading and heading up that team. And at this time, come up to the podium, Ms.
Good evening again, Mayor, members of council. So the second subgroup, as has been mentioned, is going to focus on what would a partnership agreement look like between the city and a future neighborhood association for one of the neighborhoods in the historic part of the city. And so our group has, there's one member of our group that is not here today, but it is represented. It's the city attorney's office. And so we are looking through a number of agreements that already exist in other cities, and we'll probably be picking from each one of those, and from there devising a program that we feel is acceptable for Commerce City, and bring that program to you for comments and questions and suggestions. But so far we've looked at Minneapolis, Minnesota, Burlington, Vermont, Madison, Wyoming, and Denver. Our process is very early, as is the other process. We plan on putting together a draft concept of a program, then we'll present it to council, and hopefully we'll implement the program starting in December, or January of next year, but it really depends on when neighborhood associations begin forming, and once the process that the other subgroup has undertaken, it's already further along.
Thanks, Ms. I know I can speak for the team and say that we're excited to launch this program and outreach this summer, and we look forward to your input at the various outreaches. Thank you. Questions?
Mr. Bullock?
Yes. In this process, I've been working on it, and in identifying certain neighborhoods in the city, there are certain neighborhoods that, in my opinion, have already been identified, the Derby neighborhood and everything. And in the words of Orville Lewis, I would like to turn some dirt for at least 1 or 2 or 3 of these neighborhoods that are actually identified, that is, we have a unanimous support that this Derby is Derby. and put a sign up that says the Derby neighborhood. And even if it's only one, we know we're going to have outreaches for the other neighborhoods, but give people an example of what one neighborhood is going to look like. So, but that's just the opinion of one council member, and this is before any outreach starts, but I would like to see that.
Okay. Ms. Snyder?
Yes. First of all, I'd just like to thank all of you for the hard work that you've done. So thank you very much, Christy and Sandy. That was a great presentation. And all of you that worked on this, that stood up, that have been involved in this. We've actually been talking about this for a couple of years. So it's exciting to see that it's coming to fruition. And so I think you're going to get a lot of positive input from this, and that the neighborhoods, I think, are going to be real willing to come forward and participate in this process. So not really a question, just more just a compliment to say thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and we'll look forward to seeing where this will go. I think it's going to be very positive. Thanks.
Mr. Marino?
Just wanted to say that I've really enjoyed serving on this commission with fellow residents. I look at an area like Denver, and they have these historical markers of different neighborhoods in their city, and it really becomes a sense of identity for those neighborhoods and for those communities. And it becomes a source of community pride, which then translates into more participation and a greater sense of ownership in the community. As Sandy said, Commerce City is much like a small town in an urban setting. And I think that this project is something that can really further that feeling, that it is, it has the small town feel where we honor our history, we recognize it, and we celebrate it through this Neighborhood ID initiative. So I'm a big supporter. I look forward to continue to working with you on this, and like Renee said, hopefully we can turn some dirt on this soon. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's really nice to see your organization and your group working so well and getting the city all involved so that everybody wins in this. Thanks a bunch. I just want to kind of insert something now. I got a message here that said, and this has been about a half hour or so ago, Highway 2 is going to remain closed from 104th to 176 for at least a couple more hours because of the firefighting operations. And the challenge up there is there's no water supply. So they're having to truck that water in to fight all the little fires. So just so if anybody wants to go up that way, realize they could find it closed for a little while longer. Okay, next item, Mr. Flannery, is on 2011 citizen survey results, and we've all been looking forward to this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I would like to preface this presentation with the general layout of what you can see over the next, what you might anticipate over the next few weeks leading into your retreat in June. Tonight, obviously, what we'll see is a report on the survey results that we conducted over the last month and a half. And Michelle Halstead will be giving that report. Also, next week, there'll be a quarterly financial update by Mr. Tinklenberg, and we'll also give you a recap of the council retreat, staff retreat, and the information on how some of those goals have been aligned with staff and some of the progress reports already of what's going on in the departments. So, if you will, that could be our quarterly report, so to speak, of where we're at in anticipation of upcoming events and the budget process. Then on May 23rd, we have asked Sam Mamet with CML to come in and kick off a discussion on how cities across the state of Colorado have been looking at revenues and capital projects. He's got a presentation that he's done a couple of different places. I think he calls it a recession is a good thing to waste, or I'm sorry. What? A recession is a terrible thing to waste. So, and it's actually really good. And then staff will also then get into a presentation specifically on successful formulas of how to bring something to the ballot. They'll do probably a case study on what we did in 2004 on getting this whole process and this whole project built, and how that effort was successful and how long it took, and the different types of things that are going on, lessons learned, and those types of things. And then obviously then we have the retreat in June that the subcommittee and all of us discussed last week for June 13th.
13th?
Yes, 13th of June. And what we're doing is we're making that on a Monday, and I believe around 3 o'clock. Is it 3 to 8?
Yes.
3 p.m. to 8. Is that correct? Is that what your recollection? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we just said 3 to done.
Okay. So starting at 3 o'clock on Monday the 13th.
Okay, and that end date needs to be somehow kind of in there.
The what?
The end date or the end time.
Time.
I mean,
End
just
time rather than. I don't like a 3 to whenever.
Well, let's just pause for a second.
Okay.
For the folks that weren't here last weekend, or last week, obviously JD and I think Tracy was out. If I can just give a quick update to clarify what Mr. Flannery is speaking of. At our retreat earlier this year, we talked about doing a mid-year touch base, obviously building on the work or the updates that you received a couple weeks ago from Mr. Tinklenberg on some of the financial analysis, and give us that sort of mid-year pause to say, what do we need to line up potentially from a ballot perspective? Where are we at on major projects? What are the next steps? The discussion last week was that we would look to do so in a manner that was least impactful on trying to get into a weekend in the middle of summer or a whole day on a Friday. And the timing that was raised last week and seemed to be most amenable to everyone here was to do an earlier start to a regular Monday night and dedicate that Monday evening to the purpose of the retreat, more of a working session type effort as opposed to an escape somewhere else or otherwise. So I think the point was we are typically out of here by 9 or 10 o'clock. We would intend to go no later than that, but have an earlier start to allow ourselves sufficient time for some good discussion. Does that make sense, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I know that the time we got first was 9 o'clock, and then it went to 8 o'clock, and what I don't want to do is have people think they're going to leave here at 8 if that's not when it is. But I didn't want to see a when we're done. I've been to some of those meetings.
Well, in a nutshell, this is all really good. What you see tonight from Michelle Halstead is kind of a first part of your priorities. And you came out of a council retreat in February. Staff has brought together how we prioritize and roll those back into the departments, all the way into the frontline employees. But also what you have tonight then is a framework to start formulating thoughts on how you want to set priorities. And so there's no decisions on any of these. It's just good information for you to mull around as we go each week. And then we'll have a retreat, and that'll be prior to our budget kickoff. So all of this is falling into line very well. And I just wanted to start this conversation off with kind of saying that's where we're starting here. And so the next few weeks, you'll see some additional information.
Thank you.
So with that, I'd like to ask Michelle Halstead to come forward.
Good evening.
Good evening. So does that light bother you if I?
No,
Okay,
no.
just checking.
It was, somehow we just need to turn it because it was shining back here and a couple of us
Well, you just
were
wave
going
like this
blind.
if it bothers you,
It's actually
'cause-
fine where it is now.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mayor and members of council. Mark Twain said that the public is the only critic whose opinion is worth anything at all. I tend to agree, maybe outside my family. And as such, I'm excited to share the results of our 2011 citizen survey with you all tonight. The quantitative data on residents' perceptions and opinions are really going to help guide the future actions not only of staff, but certainly of council, as City Manager Flannery suggested. So tonight, I want to talk about why we did the survey, how we did it, the results, and the next steps. As the city manager mentioned, the survey is consistent with council direction from 2010 as well as this year's retreat. The last time that we did a citizen survey was actually in 2008, and it's about time to take a look and hear what our residents are thinking and feeling. Bill Hewlett, the founder of Hewlett-Packard, is attributed with the quote, "You can't manage what you can't measure," and that's something I always say when I'm in front of you. And certainly the strategic communications audit provided us with a lot of qualitative information, but this survey actually provides the quantitative information we need that can really help guide our actions moving forward. So a little bit about the survey that we did. We hired Corona Insights to conduct this year's survey. Kevin Raines, the principal, is with us here tonight in case you have some very technical questions. And they have a great knowledge about the city because they, as I said, did the last two. We conducted a telephone survey the first 2 weeks of April. This was a 15-minute survey that incorporated questions not only from 2005 and 2008, but along with some new ones that we thought we needed to test based on the communications audit done earlier this year. We had a survey sample of about 400 individuals. That's statistically significant. There was an equal distribution of northern and southern residents, as well as we set a quota of no fewer than 175 men. We can really have confidence in these data results because the margin of error from a raw perspective was about 4.8% at the 95% confidence level. And then we weighted the survey results so that the gender, the geographic location, and the length of the residency were represented in proportions reflective of the entire city. So in short, we have a strong survey that can accurately guide our future decision making. So let's talk a little bit about the general profile of our survey respondents, and this will give context and background before we dive into the findings. We were nearly evenly split with those who live north and south of 96th Avenue. Most respondents had lived in the city for approximately 5 to 9 years. We had a predominantly female demographic and a fairly good age distribution, as you can see on the slide. To set the stage for the survey, we asked residents for their general impressions of the metro area. Roughly 3 in 5 respondents felt that the Denver metro area was headed in the right direction. We also rated various government officials, both in Commerce City and in the broader metro area, and those ratings were generally positive but also very mixed. So, for example, our governor received the most positive ratings on average, but still received bad or very bad ratings from 15% of respondents, while 1/3 simply rated him as okay. 32% of residents felt the Commerce City elected officials were doing okay, and 37% felt that you were doing good or very good. And generally, all of the elected officials that we tested, from the governor to the state legislator to the county commissioners, generally received favorable ratings with the exception of local school board. So then we asked about quality of life. And while it's good and important to track this, a lot of this is outside of the control of the city. Your health, your marital bliss, your job situation, those are all factors that have an impact on how residents answer this question. But a slight majority, about 55%, rated their quality of life in Commerce City as being either good or very good. And the bulk of remaining respondents, about 37%, rated their quality of life as simply being fair. And overall, in this question, we didn't see a tremendous change between those who lived in the northern area or the southern area of the city. They had similar perceptions about their quality of life. On the other hand, ratings of Commerce City's economic conditions were much more mixed, with 1 in 5 respondents giving a negative rating compared to 27% who gave positive ratings. These perceptions really reinforce that the economy is very much on the mind of residents, despite their optimism that the metro area and elected officials are heading in the right direction. And these mixed opinions on economic conditions really set the stage and informed the needs and priorities that we look at later. So overall, most residents said they were at least somewhat satisfied with all of the aspects listed on the slide, from recreation to neighborhood issues to education and the job environment. Most people tended to be satisfied, at least somewhat satisfied, with all of these aspects. Residents, though, tended to be most satisfied with our recreational amenities, public safety, and knowledge of city services. On the other hand, they tended to have the highest level of dissatisfaction with the city's image, as well as the convenience and amount of shopping and services in the city. Interestingly, respondents from the southern part of Commerce City were more likely to be satisfied with nearly every aspect addressed on the survey, and they were especially likely to have a higher level of satisfaction with our economic development, recreational amenities, education system, and the amount and convenience of shopping and services. We also saw that respondents tended to have the highest level of knowledge about city activities that they see regularly or have an impact on their daily lives. Overall, more than 3 in 4 residents felt that they knew at least a little about Commerce City's park and recreation, community events, and our rules and regulations. But it's really important to note that very few respondents felt they knew a lot about any of the activities asked in the survey. Knowledge of many other city planning activities, including public works projects, city planning and zoning, city council discussions, and city management, was relatively low. And fewer than 1/4 of respondents said that they even had some knowledge of any of these activities, and over half said they had no knowledge of council discussions. Sorry. For the most part, respondents had similar knowledge levels regardless of where they lived. And some people could say that this is because there's an apathy in government. If your lights are on, your trash is getting picked up, you don't really have a lot to do or care. But I think as we look at later on in the survey, there are some communication challenges that we probably need to look at as well. The water? Yes, sir. So let's talk a little bit about how the staff experience was with our survey respondents. Most residents have a good rather than bad experience. About 48% said their experience was good or very good. And then 1 in 8 said their last experience with a city representative was bad or very bad. And the experiences on this question noted were different as you went to look at the regions of the city. Southern residents were roughly 3 times more likely to report a bad or very bad experience and less likely to report a positive experience. But that being said, even in the South, positive experiences outweighed the negative by a 2-to-1 margin. Roughly half of the residents rate city staff as being at least good in the performance areas of knowledge, honesty, professionalism, customer focus. And most of those who don't rate the city staff as good rate them as okay or they don't know. So there's certainly room for improvement. Roughly 4 in 5 respondents, or 80%, said they feel at least somewhat safe in their neighborhood at night, and 2 in 5 said that they feel very safe. On the other hand, roughly 1 in 10 respondents, or about 9%, said that they feel very unsafe in their neighborhoods at night. And this also breaks out along geographical lines. Only 1 in 10 residents said they feel unsafe in the north, and that's compared to the 1 in 4 in the south. Among all respondents, 91% were comfortable calling the police to report a criminal activity, and we saw that trend generally occur both in the north as well in the south. Then we asked folks why they lived in Commerce City, and approximately 4 in 5, or 82%, said that affordable housing was at least a minor reason for living in the city, and 62% said that it was a major reason. In addition, being near friends and family, liking the community, and being near a job were all at least minor reasons for half of our residents. On the other hand, being near convenient shopping and services, as well as the quality of schools, were only given as major reasons for living here by a small portion of residents, about 18 to 24%. So again, in why do you live in the city, we saw a general consistency between those living above, north of 96 and south of 96. Both essentially have the same reasons for living here, but those from the southern area of the city are more likely to have multiple strong reasons. And the average person citywide has about 3 strong reasons as to why they live here. We next asked residents what were an open-ended question about what they felt was the most important issue for Commerce City to address. Over one-third mentioned economic issues as the most pressing single issue. A general need for economic development, shopping and services, and grocery stores. Residents were also somewhat likely to mention crime prevention, educational improvements, or general cleanup of the city at 12% and 10% each as the city's most pressing issue. Here, too, we saw that demographics played a role in issue identification. Northern area residents were more likely than the South to feel shopping and services were the city's most pressing issue. And among those in the South, crime prevention, educational improvements, and general cleanup were all mentioned more frequently, but certainly no more than economic development. So then we said, we asked residents, well, what does Commerce City need? And as you can see on the slide, we asked them, could you use more of all of these? And resoundingly, the answer was yes. Over half of the respondents said Commerce City needs more of each of the 10 facilities and services addressed in the survey. 90% felt that more local job opportunities were needed. 84% felt that more shopping and services were needed. 79% felt we should do more road improvements and maintenance. And then the rest of them down the list are about 60s, 50s. But then we said, okay, just like you will be asking yourselves, what is your top priority? And you saw the differences that were much more apparent. And that's the slide that you see in front of you. When we ask specifically about the top priorities, 1 in 4 residents say that more local job opportunities is their top priority. This is followed closely by grocery stores at 20%, more shopping other than grocery stores at 16%, more police officers at 11%, and more road improvements at 10%. And then the rest of the options start to fall away. And trails, open space, even another rec center are deemed to be much lower priorities. There were also large differences in the opinions of those in the northern part of the city and those in the south. Over one-third, or 38%, of those living in the north said that more grocery stores would be their highest priority, for example, and only 5% of folks living in the south said that. Conversely, 36% of the residents living in the south said that more job opportunities would be their higher priority, and that was compared to 14% who said the same thing living north of 96th Avenue. We also saw a generally good or very good ratings for neighborhoods as opposed to bad or very bad. Certainly job opportunities, availability of restaurants and shopping, and even train traffic received more negative ratings than positive ratings. And again, this is very similar to the desires and the consistency that we talked about in the earlier slide relative to priorities. As we've, on the other hand, community noise levels, the sense of community, the cost of living, parks and recreation, and road safety all received more positive ratings than negative. As we've seen previously, resident ratings varied based on their location. Those in the northern part of the city tended to give higher ratings on air quality, community noise levels, maintenance of houses and lawns, and a sense of community, while those in the south tended to give higher ratings on the availability of restaurants and shopping and the cost of living. When we asked about neighborhood issues, very few respondents overall, about 13% or less, felt that any of the issues addressed in the survey were major problems in their neighborhoods, which is a different trend. Many issues were believed to be at least minor problems, though, for some respondents. This included unkempt lawns at 64%, criminal activity at 58%, and pet noise, specifically barking, at 56%. Among all residents, roughly 1 in 4, or 23%, said they were very proud to say they lived in Commerce City, while an additional 26% said they were somewhat proud. About 32% were neutral on the topic. On the other hand, 17% of residents said that they were at least somewhat embarrassed to live in Commerce City. Residents from the northern part of the city were slightly more likely to be embarrassed, and they were also considerably less likely to feel very proud compared to those who live in the south. Those who responded that they were at least somewhat embarrassed were asked to explain their reasons for feeling that way. The word cloud displays the words that were mentioned more or less frequently and based on their size. So the bigger the letters, the more frequently they're mentioned, the smaller, etc. Interestingly, the most common reason given was simply that the city had a bad reputation and image, presumably in the eyes of those who live outside the city. And other reasons cited the industrial area's perceived high levels of crime and general cleanliness. We also asked about how we communicate as a city, and roughly 1 in 3 residents are at least somewhat dissatisfied with city communications, with roughly 1 in 10 very dissatisfied. Again, we did not see a breakdown in north or south, at least a major difference. But we did see that the north was slightly less satisfied in city communications than those who lived in the south. Again, we asked those who were dissatisfied to explain their reasoning, and by far, the most common reason given for dissatisfaction with city communications was simply that residents weren't aware of any. Many mentioned they didn't think the city really tried to communicate with residents, and others said they simply weren't aware of any communication. A select few did acknowledge they received information, but many of those folks who were dissatisfied felt that the communications were not informative or useful. One thing we did learn is that word of mouth is a common means of learning about city issues. 66%, or 2/3 of our residents, learn about city information from friends and neighbors. Roughly half read city news, while nearly half learn about information from Denver television and local or Denver newspapers. When asked residents how they prefer to receive information about Commerce City, the most preferred method was through the mail, at about 35%. And email, newsletters, local newspapers, and the city news were all preferred by significant portions of respondents. This was also an area we didn't see any statistically significant difference in geographic location. It was pretty even across the board. We also asked if residents felt the city received fair and unbiased coverage from these information sources. Generally, respondents felt the city received unbiased coverage inside the city, but not outside. And that was similar, again, north versus south. And this really validates the communications audit finding about, if you remember, of how others perceive us and our own perceptions. The belief that the residents have, and certainly the city has, of how we are perceived by others still has an impact on how we view ourselves. And that goes back when you look at that civic pride question. We still have a lot of challenges there. So what are the key trends and takeaways? We're obviously holding steady on the quality of life from our results in 2008. There's overall satisfaction with many aspects of Commerce City, from recreation parks and trails, public safety, even economic development and growth. Some of those have increased while others have remained steady. We did see positive increases in resident satisfaction with the city image and the job environment. We did see a decline, we did see an increase in the very dissatisfieds on job environment, but that's again not surprising given the economy that we're currently facing. The greatest neighborhood concern remains unkempt lawns, but it's not as a major issue that was identified in 2008. And I think most importantly, civic pride is on the rise. In this survey, 49% were proud or somewhat proud. That's a 10% increase from 2008, where the number was 39%, and nearly a 24% increase in 2005, when that number was 25%. That we're headed in the right direction. And the constant in civic pride is those people who feel neutral. So that number has hovered around the 30% mark for a while. So that's certainly an opportunity that we can take advantage of. So in summary, the survey provides quantitative data that helps guide our future actions and policies. It certainly indicates there's room for improvement in communications and customer service. The highest priorities for city improvements clearly relate to economic development. From job creation to convenient access to shopping and services, there remains distinct needs and desires within the city. A majority of residents gave positive ratings to the city quality of life, and the image of the city is improving. But the economy is clearly on residents' minds as they evaluate their overall levels of satisfaction, and that's certainly a theme that we saw throughout the entire survey. So the next steps, as soon as I'm done here, I will email you the complete survey results so you can further digest them and consider them. This is information that will be available for you during your June 13th retreat. And under City Manager Flannery's direction, staff is reviewing the results and looking at how we can incorporate the findings in daily activities and planning. So with that, I will open it up for questions, and thank you for your time.
Mr. Marino?
Thanks for your report, Michelle. I noticed that in the council communication, it said that the survey was done through telephone. How many residents that began the survey actually finished?
All of them, right? Yes. I'm going to ask Kevin that question, because that is one of the technical questions I can't quite answer.
Hi, Kevin Rains at Corona Insights. The issue with the surveys is they don't count as a complete survey unless somebody completes every single question. There will be a small number of people, it's usually maybe 10% or less, that actually get started and don't finish it.
Great, thank you.
Mr. McEldowney?
Thanks so much. Been eager to see these results. It was neat to see some of the correlations, even to our very, very small sample set that we did for the council retreat. And obviously this helps sort of reinforce some of the themes that were developed at that time, and I think gives us a great tool. I'm eager to get the more detailed results to look at those in greater depth in advance of our June meeting. So thanks very much. I think these are always super beneficial. I still have the last two versions that I keep sort of handy that I like to go back to and just kind of look at how things have trended differently and where we see, as you've highlighted here, things moving in the right direction. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Bullock?
Thank you, Michelle. A lot of these results are exactly what I expected. And some of them are even more pleasing because in some of the areas that I expected more dissatisfaction, it didn't come out that way. So I see we're moving in a positive trend. And I know as the economy improves, these results will improve with it. And as different projects go in up north, they will improve with those also. So I want to thank you so much for these, because these will be a great help to us in our next mini retreat.
Thank you.
Ms. Teeter?
Yes, thank you again. I agree with Mr. Bullock. A lot of these, I expected these answers. One of the priorities with the people surveyed were the messy lawns, and that's one of our priorities at the retreat. Remember, you and I spoke about that.
Correct.
And secondly, I am really pleased to see the our reputation and the name of the city, people viewing it better than they have in the past. If they could only live and walk my path at these different retreats and different joint meetings I have with different metro cities, I can guarantee you people come and congratulate me all around. And I'm very proud to be part of the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Marino?
Just to add on to Councilwoman Teeter's comments, it's really encouraging to see some validation in what we went over at the retreat. It seems like our priorities are right in line with what the community has identified as their priorities. So that's really exciting.
I want to thank you also. There weren't really any surprises. Even the Parks and Rec building wasn't really a surprise. The civic pride part, this council and the council directly before that Mr. Lewis and Ms. Drotar were on, I think we need to, every once in a while, we have to thank ourselves for what we've done here. We have raised the vision of this city, and we have raised the image of this city outside by us taking such an active role outside the city, which really hadn't been done to the extent it's being done now. And it's nice to see it. It's nice to see people like Mr. Marino getting involved when he could be out making scads of money doing wonderful things, and he's here making our city better. And he's part of the reason that our civic pride is going up, as is everyone else who's sitting at this council now. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor and Council, if I may, I think that one of the things that we strategically decided to do this year compared to previous years was do a telephone survey. There were many reasons for that, but if you remember the last survey, it was at least 15 pages long, and we saw that there was a tremendous decline in response. So as I said earlier in my presentation, I am cautiously optimistic that these results will continue, and I think the next time we do a telephone survey, not next year, but the year after, we'll see the similar thing. But generally, when you think about methodology, people, when you're having a conversation, are generally, willing to engage and have, a good conversation. So I'm optimistic that those results will continue, but certainly we did change our methodology. So, 15 pages and being a little ornery about what you liked or didn't like versus having a conversation with someone can certainly trend the results maybe a little differently, but looking at some of the trends that we've seen, especially related to civic pride, that's a very defensible trend that's on the way up, and I think that we still have room for improvement, but it's a positive sign.
You always do have room for improvement. Mr. McEldowney?
I just had actually one last question on related to your comments about the type of survey or how we conducted the survey. The other thought I had is seasonality and what effect when in the year we conduct the survey has on the result. This was done, near tax time?
April 1st through the 18th.
Through the 18th. So it's an interesting time of the year. I don't know if there's any sense of how things might look if we were to conduct that survey, or if there's any merit in conducting them on a slightly more frequent basis to improve sort of the frequency and the comparison.
Well, I'll give you my non-technical Kevin question, and then I'll let Kevin give you some of the data speak on that. But I would argue that it's important for us to survey at least every other year, similar to our other municipalities across the metro area that do that. And then maybe look at those off years as diving more deeper into some of these trends that we see. So, for example, if you were in an off year and you really wanted to understand what those priorities were and perhaps what residents may or may not be willing to fund, for example, that might be an off-year survey that we would want to really dive into more depth and possibly look at focus groups or other things of that nature. But at least doing an every other year telephone survey that provides that high-level snapshot, to me, is certainly important for not only council but staff. And then I'll defer to Kevin in terms of any seasonal trends that he might see.
And then also, I know you mentioned this in the beginning, and maybe Kevin's probably the one that's going to be able to answer this, more on the scientific, why did you pick 400? Why is that specific? Those kinds of things, because I know there's people out there watching us now that said, oh, you picked 400 of your friends. Maybe you can answer into that. That'd be great.
Well, I'll address the seasonality question first. And the seasonality question, it's always an interesting one because there are a lot of things that impact surveys. So ideally, you're going to, regardless of when you conduct it, you'll conduct it at the same time each year. Probably the biggest difference that we've seen in surveys is Parks and Rec related surveys. And if you're doing it in the summer, people are more likely to think about Parks and Rec related things. But then there's also the competing priority of the people who are doing Parks and Rec related things are less likely to be home to do the survey. So you're always trying to keep those things in mind. And the bottom line is it's usually not too big of a difference. And you just, if possible, you want to be consistent in the time of year you do it.
Excellent. Thank you.
With regards to the 400, it's I always tell people that 384 technically. We had 406 surveys this year, but technically 384, I call it the going to court number because it's what's generally accepted as a statistically strong survey. And as Michelle mentioned, it's a 5% margin of error to 95% confidence interval. And essentially what that means is there's a 95% chance that any response on the survey, more or less, is within 5% of what it would be if you talk to every single person in the city. So the bottom line is if you do 30 surveys, there's a margin of error that's relatively high. And if you do 100, it goes down exponentially. And until you get to 400, it's kind of the knee in the curve where it's a really good trade-off between you've got enough surveys to be really strong, but you aren't doing so many that you're not getting much of a difference between doing more.
That's great insight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. It's nice to end on a good note. Next item, administrative council business. This is for something that you need a decision from council on. It is not reports. Mr. Bullock?
Yes, I attended on Saturday the Rotary's, Commerce City Rotary's 50th anniversary of Rotary in Commerce City. And I would like to ask for council to bring forth a proclamation to the Commerce City Rotary for their 50 years of service to the city of Commerce City. I was wishing we had had it done before the event, but I feel that we really need to honor them for the service they have done. And when you look at the history, they gave us a whole history of Commerce City Rotary from the very first meeting up until the event Saturday night. And the names of the people that have been on Rotary in this city is the history of Commerce City. So with a consensus from the council, I would like to bring forth that and have a proclamation issued to Commerce City Rotary so we can give it to them and thank them for all the service they've done for us.
I think it's a great idea. Mr. Marino, you're our contact person on that, is that correct?
Yeah, and just to go along with Councilman Bullock, I think Commerce City Rotary is truly an organization that has done so much for this community that, I'd even go a step further than a proclamation, and maybe if we could get a plaque to honor their 50 years of service to this community. Rotary, I started out Rotary in high school in Interact, and they played a big role in instilling that value of community service, and so it's a big reason why I decided to run for council. So I think that, in recognition of 50 years, a particularly large milestone in the history of that organization, we should honor it appropriately.
Okay. Does anyone have a challenge with that on council? Mr. Flannery, could you take care of that, please?
Yes, sir.
And maybe playing with Mr. Bullock's, do the proclamation, but give a plaque also. Be great. Thank you. Mr. Marino, did you have another item? Ms. Snyder.
Yes, just real quickly, I wanted to report that I had a couple of phone calls over the weekend about noise over at Pioneer Park. Apparently, there's some. Oh, you did too?
Mine, yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, it's gotten quite noisy over there. A lot of loud music. Someone actually thought there was a live band playing over there, which I seriously doubt that was the case. But if the music was that loud in the neighborhoods surrounding the area, they said it went on for pretty much the whole weekend and disturbed a lot of the homes over there. So we need to address that because, we do have some people over there that have this particular one of the individuals is, works at night, sleeps in the daytime. And I've been hearing this more and more frequently, so we definitely need to find out what's going on over there and see what we can do to address the noise in the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mr. Flannery, I had sent you an email from someone also, yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be a challenge, especially with summer coming, and it's going to be in all the parks. Mr. Bullock.
I also want to make council aware that on the 14th, they're going to do a sneak preview at Wildlife Refuge. And you really want to go out there and see this place. I mean, if you have a chance to go see it when there aren't a lot of people around and you can take all your time you need and look at it, you really want to go see it by yourself and be able to walk through it and read it all when there aren't going to be 100 people walking around next to you, because it is fantastic. And they're going to have wine and cheese.
Thank you. Okay, next is reports. Mr. Bullock? Oh, wait, before you get started, because I always do this. Mr. Flannery, you're first.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to actually have Ms. Ram Cordero come up and give a brief legislative update.
Okay, thank you.
For the third time, good evening, Mayor and members of council. I haven't been up here for a little while regarding the state legislative report, so I wanted to get up, just let you know there's not a whole lot going on right now that we are following. You have my report in front of you for you to be able to see. There are the bills that are highlighted in gray are bills that there's no final action taken yet, and we've been tracking them for a little while. The main one there is House Bill 1043, which is the fixes on the medical marijuana regulation. that passed last year. That's one that we're tracking a lot. But everything else that's going on is really redistricting. Today, the House Republicans submitted a new map, and I was unable to print it out for you and show it to you because it didn't get posted on the website until later after council meeting started. I did provide you with the last two maps that were available, and they're at the very back of the report. Essentially, the good news for Commerce City is that, as you expressed when you participated in the community hearing, Commerce City remains within Congressional District 7, including in this new map that was introduced after council started this evening. But, for example, tonight the Senate is going to be debating one of the Democratic map, Senate Bill 268. They're going to be debating it until very late tonight. So it's going to go on at least until midnight on Wednesday, when officially the legislative session is over here in Colorado. Any questions?
Questions? Ms. Snyder?
More just a comment. Ms., I'd just like to say thank you. These legislative updates have been great. I study this stuff pretty carefully and look at all the things that you have listed in detail. So I just want to say thank you and let you know that these have really been great. So City Manager Flannery, I appreciate that you brought this new, brought Ms. on board and this new, having this report. We've never had that until this last year, and it's really been great help to me. So thank you very much for that, and thank you, Ms., for the great job you're doing.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Flannery?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm not sure what the mics are doing tonight, but
yeah, they're just on and off.
Want to let you know that next week, Congressman Perlmutter will be here, and he will be in attendance to watch our council meeting. So next week, we have a lot of good items. As I mentioned earlier, we'll have a quarterly update by Mr. Tinklenberg, a report on both the council and staff retreat. So I think it's a great meeting for him to come to and actually see us all in action. And we are probably going to put him in front of the meeting for a recognition as well.
Great.
So that's next week. On May 26th, wanted to reiterate an email that you received earlier. The Visitor Center event will be occurring. Secretary of the Interior, Ken Salazar, will be in attendance, and it starts at 11 a.m. out at the Visitor Center.
Okay. Mr. Gaylor?
I have nothing further this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you for waiting, Mr. Bullock. Mr. Bullock?
Oh, okay. Starting back last week, Tuesday, the municipal clerk's luncheon was Tuesday afternoon at noon at Buffalo Run. Then I went to the Habitat for Humanity's open house and the ribbon cutting for 4 new houses down there off of Ivanhoe, 71st and Ivanhoe. From there, went right over to the high school for the Commerce City Cultural Council Adams 14 Art Fest. And if you don't believe that there are people that have art in their body from the day they're born, go over there and look at some of that from kids in elementary school, 1st and 2nd grade, that can do things that you're saying, oh, no, this is some kind of hoax. It's like they're telling us that, but I actually believe that they have that kind of skill, and if you don't nurture it, you're losing something that's very near and dear to life itself. And that's weird from me saying that. Okay. Saturday, I went to the pancake breakfast, and I was there so early that I could have helped them start making pancakes and everything. But then I took pictures with all the ladies in there, and it was kind of funny that there was only about maybe 20 people there when I first got there, but by the time I left the rec center around 9:30 or 10 o'clock, I think there were over 100 people in there eating. And then Saturday night, the 50th anniversary for Rotary over at Worth Manor. I was also appointed to the board of the Friends of the Front Range Wildlife Refuge board of directors, and by no fault of my own, if you miss a meeting, you're in trouble because you get nominated for something you really don't want to do, and I'm the treasurer now. And so I will never miss another meeting, because it's very dangerous. That's my week.
Thanks. Mr. McEldowney.
No report.
Ms. Teeter.
Just two things. Can I be excused next week to go on my vacation?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody
And-
have a problem with that?
No problem.
No.
And secondly, I want to thank you, Cheryl. 2 weeks in a row, I have left my agenda at my office, and she's been such a dear that she's printed them out and put the tabs in and delivered them here for me. Thank you.
Mr. Marino? Seems like Tuesday, the three of us kind of were joined at the hip that day.
Yeah. I just wanted to actually make a substitute motion to Councilwoman Teeter's request that I actually go on the vacation with you as well. That'd be great.
Want to come?
Where are you going?
Maui.
Oh, wow. Nice. Yes, I would like to come in that case. But yes, just wanted to report on attending the Rotary 50th anniversary. Great to see that group celebrating such a long history of service to this community. And I didn't realize this until later on in the art show, but two of my cousins actually had artwork in that art show, so it was really great to see their pieces of art. They're very, very talented kids. And also got to stop by Habitat for Humanity for a brief, about 2 minutes, actually, because I had to run over here to a planning commission meeting, which ended up getting canceled. But it was an interesting night running around to different places, but that's about it.
Okay. Mr. Benson?
Yes, I had no meetings last week. I just wanted to announce that starting tomorrow, I'm having a ward meeting or a citizens meeting the second Tuesday of every month at Stelato's Deli and Grocery at 104th and Chambers. That'll be the second Tuesday of every month from now on. Thank you.
Any particular time?
9 o'clock.
It's 24 hours? No.
Okay, hey, that works for me. It's your time.
I'm sorry, thank you. It's 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Right.
Okay.
9 a.m.
I did see your picture in the paper this week. Welcome back, Ms. Carson.
Yes, it's nice to be back, so I have no report other than they worked me half to death the last 2 weeks, so if I look a little tired, I am. But no, I'm glad to be back.
Ms. Snyder?
Yes, since I missed last week, and although I made a joke earlier in the meeting about still being alive, I did want to say thank you to everybody who called and checked on me and made sure that I was doing okay. So, all joking aside, I do appreciate that more than you know, and I'm doing fine, so thank you so much. I love you guys. So I just have a little bit more than this week to report because I wasn't here last week, but I did attend the ACED luncheon. The mayor and I attended the CASA dinner, and Arbor Day. It was freezing. It was staff and Carolyn and myself out there freezing to death. We got our picture taken, and then I hauled a bunch of the food over to the rebuilding together that I went to right afterwards. The Perot family that was the recipient of the rebuilding together work is a family that I've known since I was a little girl. I used to live just 2 houses down from them, and I've known them for years, and they used to buy the most Girl Scout cookies from me of anyone, so they were always one of the first houses I hit. So it was really wonderful to see them and to see how that, it's just, when you go and see people that you've known your whole life, it just makes you feel so good to see that they're still part of our community, and then to see the wonderful team of rebuilding, a really great group out there helping out. So, yeah, really great day that day. Attended the pancake breakfast. It was great, as it always is. I love that event. The pancakes are great. And I want to say thanks to all the seniors and to the staff and for everyone, the Girl Scouts that were out from Landmark Academy. They came and they volunteered, and they were just sweet, sweet girls out there doing a great job. So I want to say thank you to them as well. And then I attended the Autism Speaks event that same day over at the stadium, and that's truly an event that is amazing. Thousands and thousands of families and children with autism are there, and they make their own teams, and they design their own T-shirts and their little individual family teams to go out and support their family member, their child. that has autism, and I just thought it was unbelievable, and they just do so well. They're really, really an amazing group, so I was proud to be a part of that. Wanted to remind everybody that the 14er Fest is coming up. That's going to be this Friday, the 13th, and so I just wanted to say if anyone hasn't gotten on the list to attend that, certainly think about doing so, because that's a great event that supports our school district. And I also want to congratulate the Cultural Council for the art show. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay. I've got a few things. Thursday, it seemed like Mr. Bullock and Mr. Marino were following each other from the city clerk's event to Habitat to the art show, and all of them were great. Thursday did National Day of Prayer out at the Omni, and I want to thank Pastor Bender for the invite. It's always good to kind of put your hands back where they belong and start looking at who really is important. Did Family Tree at Arvada Center on Thursday night, which is another good group that's out there doing all of those things, trying to help people who are in really bad need. Friday did the RAC meeting, which is the Regional Air Quality. And let me tell you, listening to this talk tonight is like going to those meetings there. I'm really impressed that our council would come and say, listen, we just want suggestions rather than saying, no, we don't want it. When I go to these RAC meetings, it's all about, no, we don't want cars. We don't have another thing to offer you, but we don't want cars, we don't want electricity, we want all the refineries gone, and we want the animals back in the middle of the street. But it's so nice to see our council saying, you know what, we know you have to do this, but let's look at some other ways. That's the way it should be. There should be options, not strictly not in my backyard. I know that's going to get me in nothing but trouble because I have those meetings every month, but they're used to me being the challenge there, the same as they are here. Last thing, in case somebody doesn't know this, I am not up for re-election in November. There are people out there who think they're running against me. Listen, you will not see my name on the ballot, so don't worry about it, and you don't need to talk about me. Mr. Flannery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize. I missed a couple of notes.
For shame.
One, you've probably seen a lot of much more abnormal discussions going on back here because of the fire, and that's what we've been monitoring. The Highway 2 is open.
Yes, good.
So that has been reopened. And secondly, I'd like to have Tom Aker address the I-70 Pact.
Sure, that's fine.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Just wanted to, pass on a word of thanks from the citizens who attended, for those who City Council were able to make the PACT public meeting at the Rec Center on Wednesday evening. Mr. Cerna, Scott Jakewith, and Jimmy Birds were there representing us from the citizen standpoint, and Brian and I were there from staff. And then Guillermo and myself attended Saturday's meeting in Denver, and the Commerce City meeting was very much more attended than the Denver meeting. So I wanted to pass that on. I think we had lots of good input, and we'll have another PACT meeting on Thursday afternoon. Again, thanks for coming.
Good. And yes. Yes, and then the governor did have his bottoms up ED meeting at Parks and Rec today, and there were 9 counties represented, so it was a pretty good turn. Something about having a meeting in Commerce City gets the people out. I don't know what it is, but boy, we got a lot of people there today. If there be no further business come before this council, we're adjourned. Please drive safe.